See what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. Alright. Get this maximized. Get this minimized. Bruce Neesmith. Hi. Exclusive. Once in a lifetime. Skyrim's design lead on where he would set the Elder Scrolls 6 and what to expect from the future of Fallout. So, Bruce Neesmith, I am pretty sure Bruce Neesmith. We'll go to his Wikipedia page. Now, you have to take Wikipedia with a grain of salt because Wikipedia has been provably shown to be wrong when it comes to the way that it documents game design work. For instance, I believe Michael Kirkbride was credited as a lead game designer on Oblivion, despite the fact that he was actually a contractor who pretty much just did lore. He basically just wrote some books for Oblivion. I think he wrote some of the dialogue for Mankar Cameron, but he was done through contract work, so he wasn't a designer. I recognize that name, but that's a new picture. Hi, Tendava, if that's how you say it. He worked on Fallout 3, 4, Oblivion, and was the lead designer on Skyrim. So, am I not on? Oh, there we go. So let's see how far back this man goes. Yes, in '95, Neesmith moved into the computer game field, contributing to Daggerfall and Terminator computer games, where he worked extensively on Oblivion and its expansion, The Shivering Isles. And he was the lead designer on Skyrim. Some of the writing for was nominated for an award. Okay. So it doesn't actually say that he worked on Morrowind in any of the descriptors. Does it say it down here? Monsters Compendium 91. It doesn't actually say that he worked on Morrowind at all, but just for clarity's sake on what it says he's worked on, it's Yoda now. Ketamine, I must go do. Bruce Neesmith has called, this is like the omniscient neutral voice, has called on Bethesda to make player choices count for more and build more dynamic worlds in order to meet fan expectations for the Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5 in an exclusive interview with digital PR agency Pressbox PR. Neesmith, who left Bethesda in 2021 midway through the development of Starfield, held a number of key roles at the studio, including lead designer for Skyrim, and is known as one of the architects of the radio questing system. Which, the radio questing system is just the way that the game generates quests infinitely based off certain things. Like, you can do the bounty quest in Skyrim where you go hunt down like a giant or a bandit leader over and over. But it also is a way to introduce variety into set in stone quests, right? So you have, you tried mercenary work, it might suit you. Whatever his name is, he gives you a quest to go get his sword. And the quest itself is fixed. You always do it one time for this guy. But where it is randomly generated based off a list of dungeons nearby. Presumably to give it a different feel each time. So when people criticize Radiant quest system, they usually mean the like bounty quests that like just have generic dialogue and they're infinitely repeatable. I personally dislike Radiant questing being integrated into the miscellaneous quests like Amaran's Sword or like when you go to Windhelm and the guy who walks around in scaled armor tells you to go clear out a bandit camp to show that he like cares about the Argonians or whatever. The dungeon you get sent to is Radiant, but the quest is one time. So I dislike that personally, but that is an interesting way to give every playthrough spice. Personally, my issue with that kind of implementation of radiant questing is that it ultimately means that the quest itself is meaningless. The quest is just one dungeon crawl, and the game knows it. So if you were going to rely on it, you would need every dungeon to be a banger, and I don't think that's the case in any Bethesda game. Left Bethesda during the development of Starfield. I also believe a lot of people left Bethesda during the production of Starfield. There was Will Shen, who was really famous because he did a lot of work on Fallout 4's Far Harbor. He wasn't Nuka World. No one has taken credit for Nuka World because Nuka World was ass. But I believe Will Shen did Far Harbor and then did a majority of the work on Starfield, and then he left Bethesda after the game came out. One of the big reasons that people decide to describe working at Bethesda being ass during Starfield is because they had too many people, and they couldn't effectively talk with people. Like, because you have to get a design decision approved, you'd have to talk to the person above you, you'd have to go to someone else, you'd have to get something approved, and it just wasn't time efficient. There's also the fact that a lot of people are going to get laid off because of the price. I think the AI bubble, and then the middling sales of Starfield, and then downsizing. In a wide-ranging interview, Neesmith discovered the Loki Redeemed series, a trilogy of novels he has released after leaving Bethesda, and his hopes and ideas for how the Elder Scrolls and Fallout series could continue to evolve. Read the full interview below. How long have you been enjoying your career as an author since leaving Bethesda? Since leaving Bethesda? Well, my career has been about telling stories. It's not something that I immediately understood myself. It comes to you a little bit later. Now I get to tell stories I want to tell that are wholly my own, and that I have full say in. Not that I didn't absolutely love telling stories that were more collaborative or had more direction or guardrails on them, but now I get to play in a new area, a new sandbox where I don't have to deal with all that. You could look into everything, but I mean, yeah, you can't just write your own shit and then make everyone else program around it. Is there anything you missed from your time at Bethesda working on Elder Scrolls or Fallout? Absolutely. I missed the sense of total control over the minutia. I did a lot of systems design, so for me, dealing with how the world is actually going to work on top of creating the stories, you're creating an entire actual world at a level of detail that would be boring as hell in a novel. Nobody wants to hear about that, but that's a lot of fun for me. I'm kind of a math geek, so I've lived a lot of my life in spreadsheets, and I really enjoy the process of making games, game rules, all things like that. Especially on a very, very large stage when working for Bethesda, and prior to that, TSR. Bethesda TS. Oh, it's a company. As a novelist, I'm on a very small stage. Question. How does the lore building of writing a novel compare to the environmental storytelling that's possible when creating games? Classic Bethesda visual storytelling. It's the skeleton with the fucking beer bottle in its hands. It's just different. In novels, the world building has to serve this story. When you're making a game, because it has so many different stories, the world has to take center stage, plug into that. And the stories sort of plug into that. This is true. Ways that it's been described by people who talk about Bethesda games are that the player creates their own story, which is a little disrespectful to the people who write the stories in these games, but it's also sort of true. I mean, your own experience with the world will create your own personal stories with it, and so the world needs to be detailed and accommodating enough for that story to exist. It can't just be that the moment you go off the rails, there's just nothing to do. But that's honestly one of the issues with the later Bethesda games. You are restricted by the nature of the world building, whereas when I'm writing a novel, also I'm wearing glasses and reading in light mode. Sorry. The world building is the servant to the story. If I want to tell a story a certain way, I could just change the world. I don't need to deal with the mathematics of it. I don't need to explain everything. I only need to explain those things that the reader would need to know to understand the story. When you're making a game like Skyrim, everything has to make sense. The eating of the food, the sleeping in the beds, all of it. Things that are not necessarily relevant to the story, but are highly relevant to immersion and that feeling of being in a place. I don't know how I feel about this. I think it's very common sentiment that immersion is one of the strongest aspects of the Tez games and of Fallout games. But I specifically adore aspects of games that are gamey and that are silly because they're gamey. Like, I really appreciate in these games where like a character will ragdoll and then get up and then go like, ugh, and then continue with dialogue like nothing happened. Like, that's obviously very not realistic and it's immersion shattering, but it's like enjoyable. There's like a lot of aspects to these games where your immersion gets broken, but it's either irrelevant to your actual enjoyment or it's better because it's funny. I mean, getting slammed and ragdolled by a giant is definitely immersion shattering. I have fond memories of that. Like, there was someone who explained this when it comes to Zelda, because Zelda isn't realistic looking at all. The Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom games are cel shaded, which gives it a distinct, and that cartoony look is obviously going to help not make it immersive because it's not realistic. But then, like, the actual gameplay systems in those games, the chemistry system, I think it's called by Nintendo, makes those games have a very strong sense of realism. Like, the fact that if you, like, drop pine cones and light them on fire, it creates an updraft. And it's like, that's another way to create immersion, where it's immersion through the gameplay, as opposed to, like, you can, like, hear birds chirping, and there's, like, steam rising up, and your vision is obscured, and the day-night cycle is slow. Like, there's alternate ways around it, and I just don't think that, like, classic, like, this type of immersion is necessarily, like, the best way to go about it. Especially not if they're going to stay in that engine. That engine is so janky. The jank improves the vibes instead of ruining them. It's person to person. I've been watching Will Loves Video Games Oblivion video lately, and he seems to really value that immersion that comes with a game like Elder Scrolls. So I think it's just different person to person. But I just think that ultimately, you're playing a game. Like, how immersed you get into it can only be as long as... it's just like, I don't know, I've read books too, and it's like, you don't necessarily get immersed because, like, you feel like you're there, right? When you're reading a book, there's no way to have that feeling because it's text. Immersion is something beyond being tricked into thinking you're there. What was it like to be such a trusted resource on the lore of the Elder Scrolls series from your time at Bethesda? This guy was a lore head. Oh, I was not the lore master. Gotta read ahead a little bit sometimes. The immersive feel of Morrowind is unmatched for me. The intro with the dream into the wake up with Jib and then coming on deck to the call of the Silch Trader. But you're right, mechanics can be a good way to bring immersion. I would argue Morrowind is a game that's very much more immersive because of the writing than the visual presentation. It's a very common sentiment that, like, Morrowind feels like a place that you're in rather than a place that exists for you to play with. Like, when you play Fallout 4, a lot of the settlements don't make any actual fucking sense, and it just feels like they exist so that you can go there and see them. But, like, in Morrowind, you can pretty conceivably see Aldrune and, like, Sagerth Mora. Is that the town? And, like, Vivek. You can imagine those places continuing to run day by day, even if the Nerevari never, like, came. And like the political conflict with like all the great houses interfering with each other, and like the Morag Tong being sent to assassinate people that are involved with other people. Despite the fact that the Nerevarine is a chosen one, it feels very much like the world like would have found a way to continue turning without you. It's more so the main quest that like makes you a key part of it that is like that. Which is why I think the main quest is so special in Morrowind. Because it's like the exception to it, and they kind of nail it. Even though the quest can be annoying to do, I really like the quest with the becoming Hortator and Nerevarine. Because, like, the gameplay-wise, those quests are just going to people and talking and then killing things. But, like, writing-wise, it is interesting to see the way that, like, these people don't necessarily give a shit that you're the chosen one. They just need to, like, be able to use you for their own benefit. That was Kurt Coleman. He was definitely the lore master. When I had lore questions or any other issues, I'd be trotting down the hall to his door and asking him those questions. Did I know quite a bit about the series? Yes, but I was not the final authority. I was probably 3 or 4 or 5 down the chain there. I was more the systems guy. I was lead designer in Skyrim and design director for Bethesda for quite some time. They don't... He attributes Kurt Coleman, but I don't think they do actually have one guy that like checks everything to be lore accurate, which is why there's so many contradictions in Skyrim and Oblivion to a lot of things in the series. You can always make the argument that that's for the best, though, because of unreliable narrator. Most of your skill and power progress is detached from quest progress in Morrowind. You get some rewards, but they're small usually. The quests are hard, they're tedious even. Yes. I don't know how I feel about skill progression in Morrowind, because the only skills in Morrowind that make me feel like I've grown to this insane degree are like athletics, acrobatics, and like magic skills. Like, those are the only ones that it feels like from wherever you start to 100 have a consistent growth. Once you're hitting more than missing, your combat skills don't feel like they improve. How far forward did you or the team look ahead to potential ways to take the world of the Elder Scrolls? Todd Howard sets the direction for the series and the games. His philosophy, which I completely subscribe to, is you have this game in front of you. You have to make it as awesome as you can. You worry about the next game later. That, I would say, a lot of people would dunk on Todd for saying, but I kind of think that's based Todd. But also, you have to wonder when Todd said this. He's not saying if he said this. He's saying it's his philosophy. But obviously, Bethesda's big enough that they can do multiple games at once, and they can release them faster. This philosophy more so, I feel like, would describe them in the 2000s rather than the 2010s or 2020s. With that said, there's obviously some things you don't want to do. We don't tell a story where we literally blow up Tamriel and sink the continents. We don't do excessive things like that. You don't spend your time and energy worrying about the sequels. You don't even spend your time and energy worrying about DLC. Yeah. You have to remain focused on this game. This game has to be amazing, because if this game isn't amazing, there is no next game. Jesus. You can always find a way to go to the next step on whatever it may happen to be, but you have to remain focused in the present. You can't be looking at the future, at least not at that level. So yeah, this is one of those things that is actually like, this is probably why Morrowind is so good, because Morrowind is made out of desperation. Whereas, the more that you look at it, post Saved by Morrowind mentality, there we go. Like right after they were about to go under but didn't. Yeah, but it seems like over time they've definitely changed on how they feel about that. I mean, Fallout 4 was 2016, and Starfield was, I think, 2023. It was 8 years, I believe, so they've obviously changed how they feel about this by now, but... Puffy Nipples 1337 1738. Are the DLC designed at the same time as the base game, or does that come later too? Uh, it was when we were done. Todd may be noodling around with some stuff towards the end of the project in advance because that's his job, to set the direction. But once we go gold, which is no longer a term that has any meaning but has stuck around for a long time, that's when we can start looking at DLCs. Alright, what is going gold? I'm not familiar with this lingo. But their fans want depth. They want to be arcade and mainstream. The game's main development is finished and a final master version has been approved except for manufacturing and digital release. So I understand why he says this doesn't matter anymore, because a lot of games don't really finish their final version when they release. They continue to update after launch. It's one of those things that I think is theoretically a good thing, but it's just used by game studios to be lazy. But I mean, in theory, your games being updated forever is a good thing, if it means that they run better. But you also have to remember, once we're done and can no longer touch anything, it hasn't hit the players yet. There's quite a delay there, and there's two things that start going on. I just think about the Josh Sawyer interviews where he talks about how they were changing things like I think a week before release. You immediately start working on fixing those bugs that still remain in the game. Every studio does this. This isn't unique to Bethesda. That's also when you start looking at what the DLCs are going to be. DLC is largely a matter of opportunity, as well as the obvious stuff. You don't know at the beginning of the project what's going to make great DLC for the game, but by the end of it, you probably have a pretty good idea because now the game is made. You can see where the spots are. This is pretty obvious if you look at the DLC, like especially like Oblivion and Skyrim, because like the Shivering Isles is kind of like everything that base game Oblivion has, but like perfected. Like the like goofy dialogue, the like interesting quest structures where like there's like that quest where you choose between it's in the Shivering Isles. You choose between which side to go down, and you can choose it like either based on what is the choice between? It's between like I think it's Syl and it's Mania and Dementia, and they tell you like what they're like, and then there's like different quests for each different side of it, and the quests themselves mostly accomplish the same things, but what you actually do in them is slightly different. Like, I think Dementia is like a combat gauntlet, and then Mania is like a stealth sequence, or something like that. And then there's like all the different side quests in the Shivering Isles. You can go to like that town where like they all have doppelgangers that they're scared are gonna kill them. The Knights of the Thorn get referenced by that one guy, and then Passwall has what do you do in Passwall? You have like Jared, who's just like a goofy NPC. But then you actually have like the interesting storytelling with like Jigalag, that's his name. Where like he's a villain, but like he's more so a villain specifically because of the fact that he's now trapped from his previous actions, and he's more so tired of it because he's trapped in that cycle. And so it's kind of like a situation where even though he's like an objective evil, like hell monster kind of villain, he's almost more sympathetic at the time that you run into him, if he wasn't like trying to kill everyone. Them being the same dude is dope. I wish they would have done something with Jiglag in Skyrim. In the case of the Shivering Isles, Shigarath had done so well in Oblivion, we thought, okay, we've got to do more with this guy. He was a fan favorite. He had a very good treatment in Oblivion. He really deserved to have his own place, and he's not your standard villain either. Interesting. They actually think Shigarath is a villain. Or the villain of the Shivering Isles. He's not going to conquer the world so he can roll over it all. He's just this insane guy who really... With Dragonborn for Skyrim, we wanted to do as much with the dragons as possible. They were the big feature of Skyrim, so we definitely were looking to do more with them and do as much as possible with that in Dragonborn. Dragonborn is less so, I think, a perfection of Skyrim, but I think that might just be because Skyrim is fundamentally worse than Oblivion. Dragonborn, especially I think the dungeons, they put some effort into trying to make all of the Dragonborn dungeons pretty different. Like, the main quest dungeons where you have to go to, like, the sunken place with, like, Neloth and do, like, the cube things. Or, the giant Nord burial thing you get Freya? Is that her name? Freya in? And, Apocrypha being sort of, like, mini, Oblivion gates. I don't know that it works, but it's definitely a lot better than the base game. At least to me. You'll remember, too, the vampire story was another one of the big DLCs. Dawnguard. The vampire story. Vampires had gotten short shrift in Skyrim before that. Not that they were not present, but we didn't have a lot of good storylines with vampires in Skyrim. And they were something that all the way back to the Daggerfall days, they had been a very important part of the lore. So we decided, hey, let's do something big with them. Yeah, nothing gets done with Skyrim's vampires. You have, like, one quest with Morthal, where you go kill one. And then you have one where they drug you in the scuba den, and I think that's it. Does Todd Howard have a framework for where he wants to take the story and setting in the Elder Scrolls 6, 7? Oh no. I'm brain fried. He thinks about it before we do. That is his role. That's his job. He would tell us, I'm looking at this place that I'd like to do, and I'm thinking about these things. But it's all very meta and very fluid. Yeah, that's a nothing answer. Saying fuck off. There will be a lot of time between Skyrim and Elder Scrolls 6, so the things that were on his mind at the end of Skyrim compared to the things that are on his mind when it's time to actually start working on what comes next, there are a lot of changes that go on there. Since Skyrim, the industry has changed. The focus of the studio changed. New ideas came to light. It's a very organic process in that way. It isn't necessarily locked down tight. Todd has his meta ideas and he shares some of them, and others he just keeps to himself. That's a very dodgy interview question. That's like saying buzzwords to get out of having to elaborate further. And it's mostly because Bethesda has shifted into trying to make money more than create art. I mean, you could say that they were always about making money, right? Because, like, they needed Morrowind to sell to exist, but... Starfield isn't, Morrowind. Vampire Lord is gimmicky, but as it came out the box, it was more bells and whistles than anything. Gameplay, it's just useless. It's like werewolfism. It's like even lycanthropy in Skyrim is ass. Even if you fully max out that tree, it's just it's ass because they didn't properly balance everything. I remember, even if you play with your werewolf ability, the run into and the companions with the silver hands, because the silver hands have lower minimum level enemies, higher minimum level enemies. So you get vibe checked by the silver hands if you actually go to kill them. They'll just maul you as a werewolf. You have to cheese and ragdoll enemies, so it ends up being Your werewolf ability just feels like you have infinite unrelenting force instead of like you're actually like a strong beast. Morrowind Werewolf better? I disagree. I actually do like Skyrim's better. Cheesing versus super effective. Do you recall any promises made to Kurt Coleman to be the lead on the Elder Scrolls 6 and turn it into the Empire Strikes Back of the series? The indirect idea that Skyrim and Oblivion were not. One of the beauties of Elder Scrolls stories, and to a certain extent also the Fallout stories, is that the world takes center stage with all the stories attached to it. That means there's room for lots of different stories. There's room for lots of things to happen. It's not monothemed. I gotta read this again. That means there's room for lots of different stories. There's room for lots of things to happen. It's not monothemed. True. You still have quests that tie to the main theme of the game, and you can still have a main theme of the game even in an open game like Elder Scrolls. I mean, Fallout's open world, and they still have the general themes of their games. You have New Vegas, which is about sort of freedom versus security, with like Caesar and the NCR versus like the anarchy of like independent Vegas, or like pseudo anarchy of House. And you have, I mean, I guess the themes of the DLC are more different, but like all the DLC revolve around the theme of like you have to let go. Like they have to let go of the Sierra Madre. They've got to let go of Vengeance. They've got to let go of Old World Blues. They've got to let go of. Was it Hopeville? Is Hopeville the city that you destroy? I can't remember the actual name of the town that Ulysses is pissed off about. But letting go is like the central theme there. So it's like you do have themes in Fallout, despite New Vegas being an open world game. So it's like this idea that like you can't have like a general theme or story in an Elder Scrolls game is just cope. It's just like I don't want to. In Skyrim, we had the whole Civil War storyline, as well as the dragons, and those two coexisted, and they coexisted quite nicely. You have the cool Empire Strikes Back type story that Kurt was thinking about, and 10 other really cool storylines going on. You don't necessarily have to choose one or the other. Every developer on the projects has their favorite moments, they have their favorite things, they have their favorite storylines, and they're not all the same, and that's a good thing. You want that diversity of opinion, you want that diversity of input in order to make a game that is grand in scope. It's true to an extent. If I were still to be working on the Elder Scrolls 6, and if Kurt were to have been the lead and that was the thing that Todd approved, I would have probably wanted him to be allowed to run wild with that idea. Indirectly saying that Todd very heavily manages what can or actually cannot be done creatively with the series. In terms more so of restricting, which is definitely an idea that's been floated about, because if I remember correctly, there were people on Starfield saying that they wanted to do certain things, but that Todd and Emil wouldn't let them. You can't jump 5 stories, I'm not interested. Morrowind Werewolf fast. That's just because Morrowind player speed is faster at a high level. That's probably why I didn't like those narratives and characters. Letting things go is how the world gets abstinence. Going into the Elder Scrolls 6, does Skyrim have a canonical endings to set up the next game in your view? I don't know. But if I were to hazard a guess, and this is just purely a swag, he's got that white man swag, I would say they will leave it undefined or leave it as neither side really won. This is bull. Fucking actually continue your stories. Write endings. This isn't hard. So, like, Fallout 1 has the ending with, like, the Master, but it's open-ended how it goes, right? But no, in Fallout 2, the Master fucking exploded. That game actually had the game was actually a sequel. This whole, like, you have to, like, guess how things win is bullshit. Like, just fucking answer that one side wins. It doesn't invalidate your ability to choose which side you win when you play Skyrim. It's stupid. And making it so that it's so vague that neither side really won would honestly be worse than writing that either side won poorly. Like, it's just so spineless. Oh, who cares about the Civil War? I mean, if you're gonna answer that something happened in your game, you just gotta fucking answer it. Like, the good ending happened in Tez 1. Dragonbreak happened in Tez 2. The Nerevarine won in Tez 3, and Martin turns into the aspect of Akatosh in Tez 4. They're obviously willing to write things like that happen. And they do note that certain aspects of the side stories of Quest happen in the later games. Like, it's mentioned that the purification, the part of the purification is mentioned in Skyrim. I think it's Lucian. That's right. It's the spirit of Lucian Lachance. He mentions that the events of Oblivion happen, like, for the side story. So it's clear that they're okay with the side stories happening. It's more so, I think, that they're concerned about trying to figure out a way to tie the main characters being all of them, but that you don't have to. They should pick a side for sure. I think that if they want to go in the direction of the Aldmeri Dominion being the villains, it makes more sense to say the Stormcloaks one. But, I mean, for a lot of reasons, it would be more interesting to have the Stormcloaks win. Just like from writing, right? Yeah, it's a boring conflict because they're just both a little right and they're both a little wrong. We have a phrase that we use in game development sometimes, which is put your toys away. For certain levels of storyline, you want to reset things back to the way they were so that you don't make sweeping changes. Now, the big grand stories, you want those to make the sweeping changes. That's what is cool and exciting. But if I'm doing a Thieves Guild storyline, I usually want to put my toys away. I want to make sure that the next guy who has to do a Thieves Guild storyline isn't highly limited or constrained by what I did, so that they have the open world to be able to explore and have a new storyline. I gotta read this again. He said that really weirdly. Big grand stories, I want to make those sweeping changes. But if I'm doing a Thieves Guild storyline, I want to put my toys away. Isn't highly limited or constrained by what I did, so they have the open world to be able to explore and have a new storyline. So what he's saying is that the main story should change what the next Tez would be like, but that all of the other storylines should be very constrained. That's a very weird thing to say if he had a very big impact on any of the side guilds in Oblivion. Because all of the side guilds in Oblivion are an imminent threat of being destroyed. Like the Necromancers under Mannimarco, the Blackwood Company, the Infiltrator in the Dark Brotherhood, and the City Watch in the Thieves Guild. All of those quest lines, if the player doesn't intervene, those people get destroyed. So this is a really bizarre statement to make as someone who worked on Oblivion. Now, obviously, he didn't do all of the guild quest lines in Oblivion, because I know for a fact Emil Pagliarillo did the Dark Brotherhood and the Arena. So I'm guessing he was more so doing mechanical work and then helping at that point in time. But it's a very bizarre way to phrase it. Yeah, it's impossible to side with the Imperial from an in-universe perspective. Like, you have to come up with some wild ways for your character to actually want to be with the Imperials. That's like some Uncle Ruckus mentality. That's why I like the guilds are typically more region-centered. The guild in Skyrim is local to that area. The guild over here could do something completely different. But dragons. Dragons are here to stay. Dragons are the new big thing. Dragons are a world change. If I were to hazard a guess, I would say either just not deal with what happened in the Civil War, or leave it and say there was a Civil War, but it didn't really come to a complete conclusion. Or some sort of detente? I don't know what that means. Easing of hostility or strange relations between countries. We'll leave it on Metal Gear. I like Metal Gear. A really shit take. Maybe if you're a Dark Elf or Beast Folk, somebody gets treated bad by Nords might side with Empire still. No. No. Because in that situation, you just don't side with either. You have to be an active apologist to be with the Imperials, which is what makes them so weird from a writing perspective for the player to join. Because, like, there are wars that exist and other people condemn both sides and just don't fight. If you're a Dark Elf or a Beast Folk, you would just go, like, fuck both of these guys. I'm out of here. Although, that gets into the racism of the Stormcloaks, and the Stormcloaks aren't actually racist as an institution, it's just that most of the people in the Stormcloaks are racist. When you go to join the bear guy, Wolpace and Kolta, what is his name? It's Brunwolf Stonewinter or something. He's like, I don't care what race you are. I care if you're a son of Skyrim. So, and you still have to go do the quest to kill the Ice Wraith, even if you're a white guy. So, like, he's not racist. It's just that most Stormcloaks are racist because, the people of Skyrim are, like, barbarians. Yeah, this is dog shit, though. Just address what happened. Like, New Vegas does this all the time with the older Fallout games, since it's set on the West Coast. It just addresses things that happened in Fallout 2. Like things that happened with the Enclave, like with Arcade. Or with the Master and Lily. Like, they just address... It's not like they ever make a big deal out of it. They just talk about what happened. Or with Marcus. That's right. Don't get a lot of humans around here. I love that guy's voice. 500 cigarettes. You know, the funniest thing is that the first time I ever heard that guy's voice actor wasn't Star Trek, it was Enemy Mine. It's so funny. Because it's funny because Enemy Mine is basically the story of Jacobstown. Which is even funnier. Technology seems to be becoming less and less advanced or sophisticated in the lands of Tamriel, with each new entry in the series, especially comparing Morrowind and Skyrim. Was that an intentional idea, and is intended to show magic is growing in power as technology is lost? It is intentional, but not for the reasons or methods that you're talking about. Morrowind was a high fantasy story. High fantasy was more popular at that point in time, but one of the things that Todd was drawn to, is the idea that the world has a normality to it that makes magic feel special, and to make all the other things that happen in the game more meaningful. Oh no, I shouldn't have looked ahead. If everybody is walking around teleporting up and down towers and all that stuff, it would make all those things feel a little bit less special. So while magic is understood and accepted in part of the world has a normality to it. Yeah, but you can accomplish this while keeping magical people magical. The Telvanni stand out because of the fact that they incorporate magic into every aspect of their life. Having to levitate to talk to some of the people makes them feel like the magic faction. But that's done while you can still completely normally walk around Vivek. Like, you just have to do both designs. This is just being lazy. If everybody is walking around... Okay, never mind. When Skyrim was released, The Lord of the Rings had dominated the fantasy genre during the Oblivion period. And that high fantasy stuff wasn't quite as popular, so the magic and technology levels were brought down to meet the fantasy community where they were. Yeah, confirming that Skyrim was intentionally... This is like the community consensus, is that, like, Oblivion was Lord of the Ring-ified because, like, Fellowship was coming out, and Skyrim was Game of Thrones-ified because Game of Thrones was coming out. And this is pretty much true. And it's part of why I just dislike those games. Because if you actually look into the lore, there's plenty of justification for Cyrodiil and Skyrim to be as magical as like Morrowind. Maybe not quite in the same ways. You probably wouldn't have Telvanni, but there are Dwemer ruins in Skyrim, and the Ayleids were considered, I think, at least on par with the Dwemer culturally. Maybe not technologically, but culturally, because of the foothold they had on the region. So and like especially with like the Oblivion Gates, there's like no reason that those two games have to be so much more mundane. They just were to appeal to people for sales. But saying that you have to do this is a cope. It's just like they just did it for sales. Because as cool as Morrowind is, that doesn't get people to buy the game. Seeing the fucking epic dragon in the snow gets people to buy the game. You hear a lot of fans who absolutely loved Morrowind and think that was the peak of the Elder Scrolls. Motherfucker spitting for real. And you know what? More power to them. That's because they love that high fantasy motif. Not really. I actually think more people have said they like Morrowind due to how real it feels compared to Oblivion and Skyrim. Oblivion and Skyrim feel more fantastical in the sense that they're unrealistic. There's too many things in those games that don't make sense, but the world of Morrowind is very grounded. Todd's view for Oblivion and Skyrim was to create more of a lower level of a fantasy setting. Yeah, he's making it normiecore. Okay, so he kind of is backhandedly saying that like people just like Morrowind because it's like epic, like with mushrooms and stuff, but like maybe he doesn't get it. From what we know, he didn't work on Morrowind, so he just might not get it. And maybe he's never played it. People who actually create stuff usually don't spend as much time engaging with the things they create. Chefs don't like cooking food for themselves, as a common example. In the early lore and early games, there are some very out there ideas with nods towards some space exploration, the battle spire, and other features. Could these elements be brought back into the modern series and reinvented somehow? There is a ton of stuff. That's one of the beauties of the Elder Scrolls series. The lore is so deep. Is this lore? It's an interview. The guy said that Morrowind was cringe at some point, so I'm going to read the interview and see if it was true. The guys working on the Elder Scrolls Online have expanded the Second Era so much that there's now even more to deal with. Yeah, that's not a good thing. They retcon so much that a lot of the main series doesn't make sense if Elder Scrolls Online is canon. If you look at what they're doing, they're also creating more of a high fantasy version of Tamriel because their game is set so far in the past, so that works for them. But there's a lot of stuff they could go to. Is a nothing answer. When you have a game where the time has been split into 6 parts, and giant constructs that are 100 feet tall stride the earth, that's all kinds of crazy things you could do if you were to choose to. I think it's dangerous to mix science fiction and fantasy. People who like fantasy like fantasy. It's not that you can't do it. It's been done before in the Might and Magic series. They took their series into space and even had ray guns by the end of it. I would go deeper and deeper into the Daedric Lords and their realms. I think that's always been at the heart of what makes the Elder Scrolls feel like the Elder Scrolls, and I think that's a lot of really interesting things you could do there. A lot has been done. And they've been featured very heavily in a lot of the Elder Scrolls pieces, but for me, that's where I would probably go. So, what do we think about mixing science fiction and fantasy? Like, if you like fantasy, just go play The Witcher. I like that, like, Morrowind has, like, the steampunk, like, Clockwork Tower. Like, or Clockwork City. Like I think that shit's cool. I think it's cool that in the future they end up going to the moon. Like I like that fantasy. It's I don't know if Skyrim wants to mix sci-fi and fantasy, then you can just do that. And I mean, it already sort of did. Like they were literally building a god in Morrowind. Like not only had the Dwemer already done that, but like that was literally the plot. Is that Dagoth was literally using like technology to build a god, a Kulakan. The Oregonian maid is an ESO somehow. Didn't Wade. Crashius Curio wrote that, didn't he? He literally gives it to you as like a memento. He tells you like this is the new stage play I was writing, and then he gives you like the book, and it's like a yes, that book was written by an Imperialist Morrowind. I was like, I know, because I always keep that on me for the rest of the game when he gives it to me. I like it when it's well done. I don't know if I want it in test to a larger degree. Well, the issue is that it already was. Although you could make the argument that the Dunmer being, or sorry, not the Dunmer, the Dwemer being high science, like sci-fi, works better as like a background element to the story. Like that they're this lost, ancient, super advanced civilization, whereas like the common people of Tamriel are more so. That does work to an extent. I feel like that contrast is higher in Skyrim because like people in Skyrim society feel more backwards than Morrowind's somehow, like in terms of like technology. But most of this is just kind of like dodging the question. Are there any parts of the Elder Scrolls lore that you regret being written in or established because of how it limits future games? Why is the answer so short? But also magical, I suppose? I mean, they mixed them. That's why so many of their technologies harness magic and all that. Like the steam and the soul gems. Which I always thought the implication was that a lot of their technology ran on soul gems. Which is really cool. At least in Skyrim. In Morrowind, it's just gems, I think. It's like rubies and emeralds. The big one would go way, way back. That would be the time-splitting thing that happened way back in the Daggerfall days. That is one of those cases where it's such a big change, we kind of just didn't address it. There's no way to claim one or the other. There's no way to do anything with it. That would be a case where we should have put more of our toys away, to use that phrase. By allowing all of the possibilities to exist and never resolving them, you cause yourself some lore issues, and I think that probably could have been handled better. I don't know. I mean, I feel like they handled everything they needed to for the future games, right? Like, all of the world-destroying stuff kind of cancels out, and then they're just like, well, orcs are a part of society. Which, I mean, it's handled well. They're sort of seen as beast folk, like, in Morrowind, and then by the time of Oblivion, they've become normal people, but they're just, like, looked at like freaks. And then by the time of Skyrim, they're just, like, normal people. The only reason they're so weird in Skyrim is just because of the fact that they have the strongholds from the days of Orsinium and all that. Crazy the other people in the world don't look at Dwemer Ruins and say this stuff makes sense to me, I'm gonna build some steam-powered stuff. It's too advanced. The modern world could never harness steam. The patented steam cube TM. Dagoth used their research in the bones of the Numidium with Tonal to create a Kulakan through the blight spread through the heart of Lucan's power. To get corpus fresh, which people who've had their mind and flesh consumed by the divine disease to be the literal flesh of a Kulakan. But I liked how Orsinium looked. If this is a visual thing, I'm curious. They looked more bleak than I thought. I love the Elder Scrolls Online white background characters. That's where I got this that's where I got this thumbnail from. It's fucking this picture right here. I just took it and removed the background. Wrapping the Numidium with the corpus flesh. Tonal magic typo. Whatever. Mugshot. Having laid the groundwork for the series, what is the one holy cow aspect of Elder Scrolls lore that you think the team should be brave enough to break for the next game? Okay, what does this mean? To express surprise, amazement. A project, process, or practice that is shielded from criticism, questioning, cancellation, often due to high-level backing, tradition, or emotional attachment, rather than its current value or strategic alignment. I hate that you have to get the AI overview. I hate it. Just show me the excerpt from Wikipedia. Is holy cow aspect real? Apparently. We just looked at it. Alpha C is a great game. Flavor text and special videos. Well, the big obvious one would be the disappearance of the Dwemer. That would be the one. I would be shocked if they do anything with that in Elder Scrolls 6. And quite frankly, if I was involved in Elder Scrolls 6, I would not deal with it either. What is he talking about? I think the Dwemer are one of those mysteries you always want to keep a mystery. But if they get to the Elder Scrolls 9 and it's time to retire the series, I think that would be a really good thing to pull out again for the players. I think they would absolutely love that. The Dwemer are kind of like the Elder Scrolls version of Tom Bombadil. I don't know what that is. You don't really know what he is, but he's fascinating. Keeping that mystery as a mystery, I think that is one of the smartest things they've done with the Elder Scrolls. Only if I thought the series was really coming to its last stages would that be the time I'd even begin to think about addressing it. Exactly, they've explained the disappearance of the Dwemer in both Morrowind and in Skyrim. What is he on about? What is Blood talking about? What is Tom Bombadil? Legendarium. He first appeared in a print. 1934? I didn't know J.R.R. was so old. I like this picture. He looks very silly. Yeah, I mean, he just hasn't played Morrowind. There's a questline in Morrowind where you look up... You literally go to research the Dwemer by going to different places and getting books for people who basically come to the direct conclusion that the Dwemer attempted to do something that caused them all to vanish. What happened to them after they disappeared is the mystery. The disappearance itself is not actually mysterious at all. I mean, it would be interesting to explain what the Dwemer are doing now, but it doesn't matter because they obviously haven't done anything to influence the world. Like, the Dwemer have essentially been disappeared for the existence of, like, I think all the mainline test games, right? So it's like, they aren't doing something in the background. Like, they didn't cause, like, Oblivion or Skyrim. So at this point, it's kind of meaningless to, like, answer that. Where do you think would be the most interesting place to set the Elder Scrolls 6? Where would I set it? I would probably go down to the Elven lands, the Somerset Isles, kind of based. I would think the break and change from the more gritty and ordinary stuff that has been done with the Nords and Cyrodiil. Based Nesmith, it would allow you to go back a little bit into the high fantasy, and I've seen what the Elder Scrolls Online guys have done with that region. I think they did a bang-up job, and you could tell some really cool stories there have been a little more elf-centric. The elves have always been kind of sitting on the side, and it would be cool to make the... Bro has never played Morrowind. My man, what is Blood Waffling about? What is Blood Waffling about? What is bro waffling about? What do you mean the elves have never had a center role? Okay. In Morrowind, the Dunmer are the native people. They make up almost half of all of the people in the region. And the entire conflict is about one of the Dunmer's resentment over how the tribunal betrayed all of the Dunmer by killing Nerevar and ascending to godhood. And the entire reason that all of this is happening is because of the background stuff with the Dwemer, who are literally just like cave elves. They're elves. And literally the main villain is an elf. And it's critical to his character that he comes from a descendant line of Bosmer. And a lot of the things around the region revolving around the Ayleids are elves. The fact that the entire point of Pelennor Whitestrake from the Knights of the Nine is that he was revolting against the elves and he gave people their freedom from the elves. And then you go to Skyrim, and the entire reason that the Civil War, which is the main thing besides dragons, is happening is because of the fact that the Thalmor are basically engineering it due to their elven supremacy. The entire series has been elf-centric. What is this guy talking about? What is this panel? What is Blood Waffling about? Bro is the Thalmor. Ever heard the idea that Nirn is actually Lorkhan's Plane of Oblivion when he tricked the Divines? Yeah, that's Mankar Cameron's thoughts. It's debatable if Mankar is onto something or if he's just tweaking, but I think Mankar is kind of tweaking. Yeah, he's kind of tweaking. Mankar isn't all there. Alright, oh, wrong screen. Could the Elder Scrolls 6 explore new areas of the world on a different continent entirely? When you look at the known continents of Tamriel, there's a lot of space still to explore. One of the things that Tamriel does not need is more of that. There's a lot of space to explore. Don't need more of that. I mean, you're gonna run out of room at some point if you actually make the fucking games. We don't need 5 new races. Or sorry, this is the real guy. We don't need 5 new races. We don't need an entire new continent to explore. If we were talking about the Elder Scrolls Online, they might have more of a need for that, but when you're doing the single-player games, it's not necessary. The single-player games have explored 10 to 15% of the known world. There's no way that number's true. (10 to 15% of the known world). Oh, no, he's talking about the entire... He's including things like Atmora and Akavir. Yeah, never mind. Mankar's theory comes from the existence of contradictions in the in-game lore. I mean, the fact that you can use the Heart of Lorkhan to change reality isn't insubstantial evidence either. That is true. The dwarves retroactively made themselves nearly or functionally immortal Slowed character win. Not necessarily 15% of the known world. I would not go to new continents, but you could have something where people from other continents come and invade or influence the world in some way, but there's so much cool stuff to explore. You can run the risk of making the world too big and too complex and raising the barrier to entry for new players too high. And you see that happen a lot. It's an unfortunate reality of online games. In order to keep their current fan base, they keep adding more, and then for someone who wants to get that, or for someone who wants to get it, it's just overwhelming. Having 52 different races, 112 different magic systems, it's exciting for the people who've been there on the ride from the beginning, but it's too challenging for people who are trying to get into it for the first time. I mean, I don't fucking care. If you don't want to play Elder Scrolls, go play Witcher. This is him just saying that we just want to keep mass appeal, and that we don't care if the world is worse off for it. But he's doing it in, like, the interview way, where you have to, like, not say it directly. Which, like, I understand, but, like... Just say we don't have any interest in going back to being how we were. Just say it straight up. I don't mind if they make a mass appeal game, just make the game, bro. Yeah, I mean, if they want to make mass appeal games, then just fucking actually make games. Is that belief in lowering barriers of entry for new players part of why there's been a concerted effort to streamline a lot of the traditional RPG elements in Oblivion and Skyrim? And do you think that trend will continue with the Elder Scrolls 6? Absolutely. And I led the charge on that, to be frank. Oh, I know why people were fucking... I know why people are being such an asshole to this guy now. He's so proud of it. Obviously, I had to persuade Todd. As he is the ultimate arbiter on these things, but I managed to do so. I can't read this with a straight face. I'm sorry. Let me get some water. Just let me wipe the smile off my face. But I managed to do so. I did a lot of the character systems, and one of Todd's philosophies early on in Oblivion, which I took to heart and why I pushed so hard for these things, is that he wanted an interfaceless game, so ideally you just play the game. You just play it. It was about getting the character system out of the player's way. You don't have your head buried in menus, stats, and rules, just enjoy the moment. It is a way to do that. In every version of the Elder Scrolls where I had any say in character systems, that is what I would push for. You just play it. It just works. I understand what he's saying. Yes, exactly. He wants to make it an action arcade game. He wants to make this Hotline Miami, which is fine. Just make Hotline Miami, right? You can have both of them exist. If you don't want to make RPGs, don't make RPGs. Yeah, you don't want to make RPGs, exactly. Just stop using the Elder Scrolls name. Just go make other games. We got rid of attributes in Skyrim, and you know what? You know who complained? Almost nobody. Alright. Skyrim dumbing down. The Elder Scrolls dumbing down. Why the Elder Scrolls isn't dumbing down. Part 2. Basically, Skyrim dumbed down. Near complete analysis of Skyrim, part 1 of 5. You know, I wonder if Kratos has ever finished this series. I saw his first part because Patrician TV ripped into him for it. Dumb down. Skyrim's dumb. Oh wait, that's like a bacon type video. Hey, it's me. I'm on there. Okay, we're getting into like unrelated stuff. R&D dumbing down, and it's Skyrim. So yeah, this is not. This is not at all some like weird thing. We'll discuss this a lot. People hate that attributes are gone. And by big YouTube to sell more streams. Almost nobody. They hardly even noticed it. I love the whole idea that you do something, you get better at it. That's now a hallmark. I mean, that's how it worked in Morrowind and Oblivion. What is bro waffling about? That's how... He doesn't understand how the games work. When you level up your skills, you get attribute bonuses because of the fact that your attributes increase by you doing related things. So if you sneak a lot, you become more agile. You literally get better by doing it. Bro doesn't understand his games. It's even the same in Oblivion. It's just the problem with Oblivion is level balancing. All the enemies are too tough. You need optimal stats. Just keep making Todd Swap. And let Miyazaki-san make the good games. The Dark Souls guy. That's now a hallmark of the Elder Scrolls series because you play the character you want to play and you just get better at playing that character. I'm going to give him some credit. I'll give him credit. This is something very enjoyable about Skyrim, is that you don't fuck yourself over by like investing a perk point into something you end up not really using, as opposed to like if you like create the wrong character in like Oblivion or Morrowind, the first like few hours suck ass, like if you build wrong. My counterpoint would just be that you can just restart the game. Like, if you get through Satanin and your character's fucking balls, just restart the game. Because it's like a 5-minute tutorial. That's less justifiable in Oblivion, because of the giant dungeon intro. But I think making a bad Morrowind character improves your arc. I have to disagree. A bad character start in Morrowind is awful. I don't mind having perks, but it's no replacement for attributes. True. I'm just saying that I'm giving him credit on this idea. I'm giving him credit here, right? I do think that Skyrim does have this quality to it. If you want to change, just start doing other stuff. You don't have to worry about where you were going to spend your points or how you were going to do this and that. Just play the game. Let's get the game out of your way. Hang on. You don't have to worry about where you're going to spend your points or how you're going to do this and that. Just play the game. Let's get the game out of your way. Is he saying not to play games? To me, it has always been one of the great things about the progression of the Elder Scrolls titles. I mean, if they just want to go to movies, that's fine. Stop making games. I'm taking a little bit of mental damage. Sorry. I don't really understand what he's trying to say. He does not care. I'm just a little confused. Let's get the game out of the way. For those who do want more of a traditional RPG experience, is the answer that other titles are available rather than the Elder Scrolls rolling back on these changes. I think they could split the series into main series cinematic story games. Yeah, just make games. Well, but you've still got Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Online for both franchises. Aren't you happy? Be happy with your MMO slop. Be happy with your online slop. Traditional RPG. Is the answer that other titles are available rather than the Elder Scrolls rolling back on those changes? This is actually a very good question. Um, I actually like this question quite a bit because this is more so the thing about the games not being like Morrowind anymore. There is the fair answer that there are other series doing it. Like, I'm sure without even reading any of this, he might say Baldur's Gate 3. That's like the big one, right? Yes. If you look at Fallout, for example, and that's another Bethesda title, of course, they are embracing old school RPG features with that, and that is intentional. Oh no. That's by the same studio, by the way. We're not talking about a studio that has a bias. It's all about how each game should approach it. Isn't Fallout 4, like, infinitely more dumbed down than Skyrim? In Fallout, they want you to have that retro feel because everything in Fallout has a retro feel. It's a world based on 1950s super science. The game rules do that as well. They're very old school RPG game rules where you get experience points and decide how to manage your character at that level. He might be talking about... He might not have ever played Fallout 4 or 76. Because Fallout 4 is just Skyrim. If you prefer those old school elements, there's a wealth of other games out there for you. For the players who want, they will find games for that. Bethesda as a studio can be the best at doing both with two different titles, but a single game can't be trying to do both. I mean, it can. I would argue Morrowind, New Vegas, and even Oblivion to an extent all achieve this. Of like having kind of numbers games where you have to build a character, but also having open worlds for you to explore. I mean, you could even make the argument Fallout 3 kind of does that. It's just that like your character build doesn't matter in Fallout 3. Baldur's Gate 3 is neat, but it's also kind of a gooner game. I mean, yeah, I've only seen porn. I've literally never seen anything but porn of the Red Lady. Fallout is played out, and it takes massive creativity, creative moves. It had a wider appeal, but a far less interested or dedicated base. The Fallout fan base is very bizarre, because you have like the originals, who like came from Interplay, and then you have the people who joined on during like Fallout 3 in New Vegas, and then now you have modern Fallout fans who are like, not to be that way about it, but they're normies who came because of the Fallout show, that have only played 76 because it's the newest game. So you've got like 3 different fan bases in Fallout that are all like constantly at each other's neck. It's really weird. There's so much infighting in New Vegas, or in the Fallout community. It's funny, so many Fallout with all the infighting. Sorry, I'm doing something real quick. Fallout 4 has good role-playing aspects until the late game. If you play on survival, like difficulty survival, not necessarily all the gameplay things, but just like the mechanical difficulty of like taking extra damage and doing extra damage, and then you don't exploit the game with knowledge, yeah, you have like mechanical role playing where like you can lean heavy into stealth, or you can go more into explosives, or you can rely on power armor. And like, because of how difficult survival is out the gate, you actually fall into a build for like the first 30 or 40 levels of survival, which I think is very epic. But I don't think Fallout 4 was designed around that, because Fallout 4 came out without survival. When you designed the Radiant Quest system, did you envision it becoming the industry standard, or do you feel it has been overused? Kurt and I were the primary drivers for the Radiant story system. It was based on a napkin drawing from Todd. I mean, you hear jokes about this, but it was literally on a napkin in the cafeteria. He drew this little circle, and this is where I want things to go. It was one of those things where he provided the long vision for the direction he wanted us to take, and from that, Kurt and I proposed the Radiant system, and it went back and forth. I think the Radiant story system has actually taken a step back a bit, not for bad reasons, but because the whole vibe of Fallout is more old school. and therefore the whole Radiant system couldn't be utilized to the same extent it could be in the Elder Scrolls. That's an interesting take. I mean, if they're just trying to be lazy, there's no reason they couldn't have used as much Radiant stuff in Fallout 4. I mean, they do. There's literally the infinite Minimin quests. As opposed to, like, the Institute or the Brotherhood, where all the Radiant quests are, like, miscellaneous or, like, optional. The Minimin will constantly keep Radiant quests in your journal. The last 3 Bethesda titles, not counting Starfield, have been Fallout stories. What's he talking about? What's the 3rd title? Oh, they might be counting the show. But he is talking about Radiant story system, so he'd be talking about games. Do they count the DLC of 76 as their own titles? Used in the service of Fallout 4. It has been refined and improved and gone through all kinds of wonderful ideas, but there are aspects that were last used in Skyrim. They've been languishing because they did not serve what the Fallout games have needed. True. I mean, I just don't think they're very good. I haven't seen the show, but I've heard it's okay. The new Star Wars mod gonna keep Starfield alive? Fallout Shelter. Yeah, they're still counting Fallout Shelter. In Fallout, for example, vendors don't have schedules. They do, actually. Your NPCs don't have all this real-world stuff where they would go to bed and have to eat and whatnot to the same extent as they do in Skyrim. They do. That's because in an old-school RPG, you want the vendor to be there to serve the player. You're not trying for a greater level of immersion. Which is based, by the way. I love that in Morrowind you can just go to a shop and they're there. One of the things that I did in the Shivering Isles was anytime an NPC was killed, all his stuff goes into his grave, and so you can go get his stuff. He's buried, and anything that's left there goes there. That kind of immersion doesn't make sense in Fallout. I've done the quest where you kill the guy who's, like, suicidal. He wants you to kill him. His body just stays there until you leave the cell. Unless I'm mistaken. So, when they get moved to the graveyard, that's something that happens off-screen. Clytemnus! Hieronymus Clytemnus, leader of the Shivering Isles Guard. So, you can just kill someone in Fallout and then just have it be that when you leave the cell gets refreshed and the data gets moved over. Like, this exact system could work in Fallout 4. Like, if you kill someone in Diamond City, you can, like, go to, like, the stands, and there's, like, a little mound for them or something. Bro falls like a feather. It's so beautiful. It's because he's an angel and he lost his wings. But yeah, there's absolutely no reason this system couldn't have been implemented in Fallout 4. Because the technical working of it isn't refined even in Oblivion, so there's no reason not to. There are things that you could do to elevate things even more in the next Elder Scrolls title, assuming that they wish to keep the Radiant system. I don't know what the team's plans are. They may decide to go in a different direction. They're very sensitive to what the audience is interested in. If they think the audience is more interested in maintaining those things, that's what they'll do. This is true. Because I remember when this article came out, this was a big deal. Where is this article? Here we go. This was a really big article when it came out. I have to find this article. Maybe I can find it on YouTube. I can't think of this. People will be disappointed in Test 6. This was a real interview Bethesda gave. I can't type. Okay, I have, like, my glasses are off. We're so interested in the audience, but also we gotta have gimmicks and push the envelope and make everything bigger every time. I can't find this video. I cannot find this. This is very... I need to find this on my own time. But there was basically an interview that came out about Test 6 after they stopped working on the DLC for Starfield, where they said that they basically had no way to not disappoint people with Test 6. And it was very telling that they had that little confidence in themselves. And it kind of sucks for Bethesda, because, like, they don't want to make the games their fans want them to make. They know they don't have an interest in making a game their fans will like. So it's like they sort of, from that perspective, have to go for mass appeal, but then that also makes them look worse. I don't feel very much sympathy for them, though, because they're just a greedy company. But this is all baloney. In Fallout 4, whenever you go to Diamond City, they move inside at night. That's why you can only shop with the one robot guy. GTA 6 is apparently going to push to create the most unprecedented AI for NPCs. Based on your experience with Bethesda's Radiant AI, what is the actual limit of making a city feel alive before the simulation starts to break under its own weight? I'll give you a multi-part answer to that. I'm going to say right now I hate GTA 6. It's doing so much stupid shit that games don't have to do to be good. That's just getting normies to go, look at it, it's so impressive. I fucking hate everything I've seen out of it. Because it just looks like a flashier GTA 5. They should just make on-rails hack and slash. Dude, that'd be awesome. You're like a Brotherhood guy with like a Gatling laser and like a certain loadout, right? So you pick like your guns you want, and then like you have to go through like a vault, and there's like different enemies based on what vault type it is, and it's like one of those old arcade games where like it would pop up on the side and you have to like react to it. That would be kind of fun. Todd Howard is very fond of saying we can do anything, but we can't do everything. So you have to make a choice. Where are you going to put your energy? Are you going to put it into expanding Radiant AI? Are you going to put it into having all those AI pieces involved in your game? Or are you going to put it elsewhere? And that's just a decision. Where am I going to spend my effort? I have limited resources, both in time and personnel. I can't do everything. I have to choose. Secondly, one of the lessons learned early on with Radiant Story and Skyrim is the realization that it is a tool. It is not the end-all be-all. We actually went too far with Radiant Stories in the process of development, and the game felt flat. Because we weren't using it as a tool to create the best stories. We were using it because it was there. It's a very good quote. It's the old saying that everything is a nail, or when you have a hammer. I think he added an or there. Everything is a nail when you have a hammer. Redguard was a tower game where they were produced. Like, they've abandoned RPG, just accept it. Are you talking about Battlespire? I think I watched Ragnarok stream that one time. It's the old saying that everything is a nail when you have a hammer. When you start seeing it as a tool to create the best player experience, that's when you get the most out of it. You focus on the player experience, what you want to get out of it, and how this is a tool that helps you do that, to make things happen the way you need them to happen. In order to make the world feel alive in Skyrim, we had a very sophisticated system with Radiant Story where if the NPC dies, this other one will take over their role. And then there's aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters and husbands and wives, and they all interact with everything. It made the world feel very, very alive. This system he's talking about is actually very cool, but it's hard to notice. Because it's so fucking annoying when dragons come down and just murder people that people have learned how to play around it. Either by not starting the main story, or by getting to points in the main story where dragon attacks pause, or by rushing the main story until you can just fucking murder dragons casually. So, like, because of that, and because of the Dawnguard patch that fixed random vampire attacks, it's very unlikely for NPCs and towns to die. So you never notice this. But this is true. If you murder... what's her name? If you murder... I don't know her name, but if you murder the Inn Lady in Whiterun, I believe the guy who... It's either Ysolda or the guy who chops wood replaces her. Sorry, not Riverwood. Whiterun. That I know that's Delphine. I can't remember. It's not Arcadia. She's the one who calls you a typical elf if you ask about magic. But like that's an example I know. Is like she actually does have a scripted replacement. Yeah, Ysolda I think takes the inn. Sorry, I meant Whiterun. I know I said Riverwood. But yeah, if you murder the innkeeper lady, Ysolda, I believe, takes her place. Like, and that's cool because like that's actually something that Ysolda mentions in dialogue. She mentions that her and the lady mention it because the lady says that she's getting old and thinking about retirement and thinking of selling the inn to Ysolda, and Ysolda says that she wants to make money from the Khajiit caravan so that she can buy the inn. Like, I think that's awesome. It's just, like, it's not likely to occur. And it's such a weird background system that, like, no one even interacts with. It's also, I think, bugged, because if Ysolda takes over the inn, you can't ask her for the rumor that starts the Daedric quest for Mephala, the one that lets you get the Ebony Blade. So, it's also weird in that aspect. In order to make the world feel alive in Skyrim, but you go to Fallout, and Fallout is much more compartmentalized. The world has a completely different feel to it, and they didn't want to lose those cool NPCs that they had spent time crafting to put a second one and a third one and have all this. So their NPCs are more static because it served their world. It gave them a better experience. They used Radiant AI in a different way. As far as what the GTA team are doing, I would really hope that they're focusing on what makes for the best player experience and how to use Radiant AI to get that rather than saying AI is cool. What can I do with it? If you create a player experience that serves the technology rather than the other way around, I think that's the cart before the horse. It's dumb that you need an end rumor to start the quest. I agree. There's no reason that if you've already done the dragon quest, he shouldn't just trust you about it if you ask. You could just have like a miscellaneous thing pop up. World has a completely different feel to it, and they don't want to lose those cool NPCs that they've took their time crafting. They're trying to say that Fallout NPCs are more unique than Elder Scrolls NPCs. Would I agree with that? I would agree New Vegas NPCs are a lot more memorable. I don't know about Fallout 4. Fallout 4 NPCs are like slightly better Skyrim NPCs, I guess. Oblivion NPCs are quite distinct, but that's not so because of, I would say, quality. It's more so because they're silly. I'd say Morrowind NPCs are also very distinct, like the actual important ones. But there's quite a few NPCs in Morrowind who could just be called like citizen, and it wouldn't change anything. Quest marker is literally impossible, bro. Radiant AIFF. Arngeir. Who is this? Who is Arngeir? Is Arngeir that guy from Dawnguard? Greybeard. Oh. Nah. I mean, they tell you to go to Iverstead and take the mountain up. It's kind of weird they don't actually give any directions as to where Iverstead is, though. They they just kind of intuit that you're gonna have a magic marker leading you to Iverstead. So they don't actually bother telling you how to get there. Imagine if you would have like walked in the opposite direction without quest markers. If you want directions to shouts, he can give them to you. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's what you mean. Is like he'll just tell you like, we found the whisper of a word. I'll mark it on your map. But it's like if he didn't give you instructions, there'd be no way to know how to get there. Shout out to that for being bugged. He'll send you to the same place twice, and it basically softlocks the quest line. It's a shame. The ECPs of that in Skyrim and in the Fallout games were quite frankly the quest feel flat because they're completely Radiant story generated. They don't have any color to them in the way that the players really want. To be fair, more advanced Radiant AI or other AI systems could solve those problems too, but now you're back to the start of the problem. We can do anything but not everything. I mean, the problem is the bigger issue is that the level of quality of like questing and writing in these games, the Radiant and non-Radiant quality is pretty comparable. So it's like that's more of an issue, for one. You get them from him and from his mysterious letter guy. Yeah, a letter from a friend. Although it's not actually clear who that is. There's a lot of theories about that. Some people think it's Some people think that it's literally your friends, like people that you have affection points with. Like if you've done a quest for someone, they like you. Because disposition actually does exist in Skyrim, even though it's not a mechanic in the same way as like Oblivion, where you can do the minigame. Doing certain actions makes people dispose to you. Like if you do someone's personal quest, that maxes it out basically. And there was an idea that it was supposed to be your literal friends telling you. You only get the letters if you shout in town. That's why it was supposed to be that way, I believe. But then they just didn't implement it right. So it's like if you shout it all, you get the letter. What ideas or themes are you now able to explore in your books that wasn't possible at Bethesda? I'm gonna skim this one. This isn't relevant. The Superman complex. Okay, but in a game, you have the issue where the player can only be a little bit special. The Dragonborn is about as special as the player character has ever become, because video game heroes need to be more of an everyman that has the potential to become a Superman. But they have to start off as an everyman and grow into that, and they rarely exceed the world. In Oblivion, you never really feel like that until you become like Shiggarath. And in Skyrim, this doesn't really happen until you kill a dragon and absorb its soul and shout. I don't know. I can't control it. I'm doing about as low maintenance as possible. I'm literally just looking at a screen of text. I can't control it. Sometimes it just doesn't disconnect. I think it's just, I think my ISP is just dog shit. You really are the Dragonborn. You really are Starborn. You really are a fallen out man. You really are John New Vegas. Given the strong Norse influence on Skyrim, was your trilogy inspired by any of the research that went into the game and its writing? I'm not. They can almost bounce back and forth in certain ways, and all of their gods are flawed. They have very human flaws they get preyed upon, and so they feel like they are regular people struggling in the same world that we are struggling in. Interesting that he mentioned Paul Bunyan and not the Greeks. Mythology for a long time. Yeah. It's not particularly relevant. Delphine says, for me, you look redeemed. Okay, no offense to this guy, but I don't really care about his books. I care about his opinions on the Elder Scrolls. Do you agree that expectations are now so high that creating the Elder Scrolls 6 or Fallout 5 has become an impossible job? I'm very fond of a phrase called the game of expectations, and I've been trotting the game of expectations out for well over a decade. Bethesda's in the bad position of having expectations being so high they cannot be met. I agree. I do agree, actually. But it's their own fault. Are you Team Bunyan or Team Daniel Boone? Who is Daniel Boone? Who is this man? American pioneer and frontiersman who exploits made him one of the first folk. Heroes of the United States. He became famous for his exploration and settlements of Kentucky. He's a large, expansive man. I'm glad they think a remake isn't worth it. They would destroy the lore, water everything down into boring slop, and insert a ton of things about modern politics. Sure. Managing expectations is the number one thing a good marketing department has to do. Let's take a look at Starfield. Let's assume that a new studio had put out Starfield. I suspect it would be talked about like the Second Coming. Oh, you guys just didn't like Starfield because you wanted Test 6. Starfield was genius, actually. But because it was released by Bethesda, that it was seen differently. Starfield is a good game. It's a very good game. It's just not the game that people expected it to be. Oh boy. You just work. The problem isn't my art. The problem is that the people can't appreciate my art. Now, going back to Elder Scrolls 6, they have that same problem, but they also have the advantage of having done Elder Scrolls 5 and 4 and 3 and 2, to where I think that they didn't make 2, I don't think. I'm pretty sure Daggerfall is a Fae, right? Yeah. They didn't do 2. Yeah, this guy just straight up doesn't know what he's talking about sometimes. Okay, we'll focus on these. To where I think they've got a good shot at meeting expectations. After Oblivion, there were very sky-high expectations, and Skyrim met them and exceeded them. After Fallout 3, there were very high expectations for Fallout 4, and the studio met them. So the potential is definitely there, but I agree with Nate Perkypile. Boy, do they have their work cut out for them. Maybe Starfield is good, I'll go buy it now. Yeah, you tell me how it goes. So, this comes down to a case where he isn't like an autist like us that is still playing these games in 2026, right? Because like these guys make games. They're not losers, right? They don't play video games, right? Because playing video games is for losers, right? Making video games makes you like an alpha Chad Thundercock, right? So for his perspective on these games is more limited to initial reception, right? because he doesn't actually engage with discourse about it. For him, it's all about making it an initial reviews, and he moves on, right? So he doesn't know that, like, people who are actually still engaged with the games to this day kind of think that, like, Skyrim and Fallout 4 are, like, dog shit. And that they don't actually do better than their prequels, that they're actually kind of downgrades in a lot of ways. So I kind of understand where his perspective comes from, because he mostly sees the big buzz when the game comes out, and then bases a lot of his viewpoints off that. And if that's all you have to base this off of, I would probably agree with him. Because, like, critically, these games get praised really highly when they come out. And they do well in sales, obviously. It's really just Starfield that had a very weird mixed reception. So I kind of understand where he's coming from. How could they shake up the Bethesda formula to subvert expectations and wrong-foot players in a good way for Fallout 5 or Elder Scrolls 6? I heard the Star Wars overhaul for Starfield made it good. You know, the thing is that I heard... I was... You know what? I'm going to look this up. I don't know what he's talking about. Catch someone off guard. Okay. Put someone in. You piece of shit, never doubt us again. My fucking god. Oh, here we go. It's been said. The elephant in the room has been addressed. I would probably look at two things. I would probably look at having the world be more dynamic. Bethesda games in the last decade have become less dynamic in order to meet the needs of what the games needed and audience expectations. But to be able to have the world be more fluid, I think that would be very cool. I also think to look at Baldur's Gate 3 and draw lessons from that MASH hit, that part of what made it so popular is that it felt like all choices were meaningful because you made a choice and it made a big difference in your play. Bethesda games have maybe pulled back from doing that a little bit. The focus is on putting your toys away, but in these games you do something in the Thieves Guild questline that completely changes what becomes of the Mages Guild, for example. What? Bro, what are you talking about? Have any questlines ever intersected? The only one that comes to mind is the Fighters and Thieves Guild and the Great Houses. Do any of the other questlines intersect? I think in Oblivion, one of your Dark Brotherhood targets is a guild member. Okay. Okay, targets to join. High Elf in Imperial City. We've done it. No. No, I don't think so. None of these... Oh, wait. I know what he's talking about here. Never mind. He's talking about the quest line in the Thieves Guild where you have to go steal the staff from the Archmage's room. If you get caught doing crimes, you can get kicked out. Yes. Because the point of the quest is that you steal the staff and then you go return it. But you can just get kicked out if you get caught. I don't know if I really count that, though. Like, that doesn't completely change what becomes of the Mages Guild. That's disingenuous phrasing of it. Thieves Guild also sends you to steal the Arrow of Extrication from Fathus Aren. They ask for alchemy ingredients and let you back in. I know, it's so funny. At least in the Dark Brotherhood, your reintroduction is like that you have to like fight the Wrath of Sithis. Like, that's kind of metal, right? We've reached the Devil May Cry music. Let's go. That doesn't change what happens in the Mages Guild, though. It just changes your standing in the guild, which I think is interesting. It's nice that there's a little bit of overlap, but it doesn't change the outcome of the guild. Whereas, for instance, I actually do think that the Morrowind ones, where the Fighters and Thieves Guild intersect, actually do change how those guild lines end, if I'm not mistaken. No. Even the Fighters and Thieves Guild don't, because you can still become the head of both. Because if you kill Shoring and then advance far enough, Perseus Mercius still advances you. The only thing is that if you do the Fighters Guild portion first and you ruin the Thieves Guild, you can't become the leader. But that's like progression. You can still do all the quests just from the other side. I would like to be doing, because I think the gaming community has spoken and they want games like Baldur's Gate 3 where their actions feel like they have an impact in a broader sense. It's not wrong. That's why people still like New Vegas. Unique weapon drop too? I don't know. I've never actually gotten kicked out of the Dark Brotherhood. I just know that's what happens. Do studios step away from having the player close off or change aspects of the game out of a fear that they won't experience all the content available to them? That was actually an intentional thing in Skyrim. The thinking was that we spent time and effort making this content. We want to make sure the player can experience it all. This was done intentionally, and I think those are good decisions. But as we're pointing out, every formula can get stale after all, so maybe it's time to shake it up and do it a little bit differently. And say all the content is available, but you may need to do another playthrough to experience all of it. I mean, that's where we were at. You can't do all the great houses in one run of Morrowind, even with the House Nalalu exploit. It's Redoran or Telvanni and then Nalalu. You're always missing out on one. There's nothing wrong with this. I like this in New Vegas, like where you have to do multiple playthroughs to experience Caesar's Legion or House versus NCR. Even the way that you decide to do the DLC changes. So, I'm very much a fan of this. Permanent consequences for actions means game replayability. Yes. Big, girthy schlock started being afraid of making players replay the game to access content with Oblivion. Oh, but it was like Baldur's Gate C. You can essentially be and do everything in one playthrough. Yes. Because you can do most of the guilds in Morrowind, but if you choose a conventional playstyle, it doesn't make a lot of gameplay sense for you to go do thief stuff if you're a warrior. Morrowind really encourages you to make different characters for the different guilds. You just can do most of them with one playthrough. Whereas Oblivion and Skyrim are like accommodating to every playthrough. Like, it's like when you get to the area in Skyrim where you have to do the frost and fire thing to get through. The game literally gives you spellbooks and scrolls to do it. Or like the Alien Pillar puzzle in Oblivion where they have a scroll merchant right there to give you all the scrolls that you need. It's just like, you're allowed to make the player use magic in the magic faction. There's also other compromises. You could just make it so that the player does the quest, but they don't get promoted because they're not magic. Because it makes sense that like Traven and Aran would use you, right, because of your power. But just make it so that you don't become Archmage if you're not a mage. I think that's pretty reasonable, I would say. Vampire character in Morrowind is crazy. Yeah. The only that's more of a bug, but there's a you were supposed to be able to do Telvanni as a vampire, but you can't. One of the greetings gets overwritten. Where would you like them to take the Fallout series next? That's a good question. I think you need a place that is dripping in character, so I would look at places like New Orleans, St. Louis, or Orlando. Florida. What happened to Disney? Yeah, he is talking about Disney World in the Fallout universe. That could be a tone of. Is he saying the tone could be fun, or it would be a ton of fun? I guess it doesn't matter. You need a place that feels like it has a lot of character. It can't be cities that don't have that. And I'm focusing on cities because Fallout tends to be a game that is developed around cities. Some of the most impressive places have already been done. Las Vegas. I mean, that's a place that's just dripping with flavor. Boston and DC. These are places that just exude that. So you need to find some place like that. Bro would never make Fallout Cleveland. It's true, he's racist. It would be interesting to take Fallout overseas, but it is a series so steeped in Americana that I don't think they would do that. Cleveland is already in Fallout. Oh, Cleveland already is Fallout. It would be interesting to take Fallout overseas, but it is steeped in Americana. It almost wouldn't work in other places. But the reason I ever brought it up at all is that America is a newer nation than many of the old world nations. When you look at Paris, London, Moscow, these are places dripping in character, but it would make for a very, very different game. Fallout, as we know it, wouldn't play there. Did he bring up... He brought up London, specifically, which is funny, because... Fallout London is a pretty successful mod project, right? I mean, Fallout London is, like, not endorsed by, but, like, tolerated by, like, official Bethesda. I do think that the old style American aesthetic is very important to Fallout, but I think you could make it work somewhere else. Fallout would definitely work in Canada and Mexico too. Contextually, it would actually work in those countries too in the Fallout settings because they were literally invaded and conquered by America pre-war. So it would actually make sense for Mexico to have some more American culture than our world does. And especially Canada. I think Canada got like almost entirely taken over by America pre-war. But I could be wrong. I'm not fully caught up on my lore. It's been a while since I've heard it. Where is it? This is the big one. A lot of people have said New Orleans would be a cool place to do Fallout. I kind of agree. I think doing a coastal area would be cool. And especially because, like, southern animals are really fun, like crocodiles. Maybe not gator claws, but having giant, like dinosaur crocodiles running around would be so based. That would be awesome. Like the fucking Guar from Morrowind, but they're, like, actually a threat. Outside of the USA... Where'd you go? I would probably have to go to Asia. I think Tokyo would be great. Oh no. They could lean into kaiju! Dinky the dinosaur makes it all the way to Asia. And that would feel a very natural fit for the series. You could do a lot of very cool stuff out there. I have no idea where Fallout 5 will be set, but it'll be in America. I would be shocked if it wasn't. We can look this up. I've never heard of anything in New Orleans myself. Why do people want a Fallout game here? Jackson Square, St. Louis Cathedral. I've heard of this, actually. It's a building. The National World War II Museum is there. That would be interesting in Fallout's universe, actually. What do people think about World War II in Fallout? Because if I'm not mistaken, the timeline splits during World War One, right? Yeah, we're already to like a bar. Smoothie King Center. Top sites. Jazz Museum. Historic French. Jeez, they're the top experiences in its food. Why don't we just go to images? What is this? Saint Hogs? Saint Rocks. I mean, that's a pretty sight. That would probably be a fun dungeon. Smoothie Kingdom faction. You'll never make it through Smoothie Kingdom. Stop killing my friends at the Smoothie Kingdom. My name is Oswald, the Delicious. How does the public perception of Todd Howard differ with the man you know? God, it's a long answer. Well, you'll have to tell me what you think the public perception of him is. I've known the man for a long time. For me to see the forest for the trees is a little difficult. I can tell you candidly that when working at Bethesda up through the Skyrim days, Todd is probably one of the best bosses I've ever had. I can also tell you he's keenly aware of the fact that he is a bottleneck and he works his ass off to not do that. Unfortunately, he doesn't succeed very well. But this is not something where he is being an ogre about it. It's a part of the culture of the studio, and that is extremely difficult to get away from because it's baked into how things are done. Even though he tries desperately not to, he does what he calls seagulling, where he swoops in and changes things. It still happens. I will give you the counterpoint too. When you build games as big as Bethesda games, Todd was very good about saying, I care about this and this and this and this. And he spends a lot of time and attention on those things. We were left to go our own way on it, not that he wouldn't come in and have to approve the work, but he would give a lot of leeway. You know, I revamped the entire magic system for Skyrim because I felt it was very old and cliched and it needed to be redone. We had talks about it. He approved the general idea and he was very involved in that. Then he let me have my head. Not that we didn't have discussions about this particular thing or that, but I had a lot of freedom to create that. A lot of freedom. It was the same with a lot of character systems. He was very involved in the perks because he had a vision for what he wanted for that. On the underlying stuff, I had a tremendous amount of freedom to do what I wanted to do. I would say that the reputation you just said is both earned and unearned because it's a big studio. It's a big project. We do big projects. We did big projects. You can have both of those things be true at the same time. I was trying to parse that because it sounded like Todd Blalem. Yeah. I revamped the entire magic system for Skyrim because I felt it was old and cliched and it needed to be redone. We found him. Ladies and gentlemen, we found him. Oh my god, man. You're telling me that the Skyrim system was done like that by a person and that it wasn't, like, top down? Like, someone did that to Magic and Todd was okay with it? He approved the general idea and he was very involved with that. Okay, so Todd did help spearhead what Skyrim Magic was, because, like, Skyrim Magic is fucking shit. I never got through editing it because I didn't want to edit it, but I do have like a 30-minute audio on why Skyrim Magic is dog shit. Like, I could release it with just like gameplay footage if I wanted to, which I can do that for a member. I have one channel member now, so I might do that. I need to write down a member magic audio. I need to remember that. Todd is not an ogre about it. He is unlayered. I mean, I think the really big issue is that Todd, the only... The reason Todd shows up late in development is because ogres only spawn into the world at level 20. You have to get to level 20 in development before Todd starts spawning. So many missed opportunities. It doesn't feel like a build. Yeah, Skyrim Magic. My issue with it is that A, you can't spellcraft. B, the default spells are samey. And 3, mechanically, it is mathematically weaker than the other skills. And at the same time, it is like 4 cheese because of impact. Todd doesn't even show up to work until the Dwemer web. Oh. Is there a system you'd love to get your hands on now to rework if you had the chance? That's a tough question. I'm very much a character systems kind of guy. So I would very much want to be part of that. And I think there's always evolutionary changes you can make. God, keep this man fucking away from it. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but you did! Yeah, I'm kind of on the anti-Nesmith arc now. I was kind of like, why are people shitting on this guy so hard? But he did Skyrim Magic. That's a tough question. It's been 13 or 14 years since Skyrim released, so he doesn't even know. Bro, it's been 15. How old is this interview? What the fuck? Bro is out of the loop. So you could redo the magic system again, quite frankly. The technology has moved forward a lot. You can make magic very cool in new ways that hasn't been explored. For me, probably the biggest thing I would want to do, probably the biggest thing I'd want to see, I might need to take a break for a second. I don't usually stare at like white screens. My eyes are getting a little tired. There's more interest in the variation of creatures. I think a good job was done in Skyrim with that, but I think that's one of the places where Starfield fell down, is that the opponents weren't interesting enough. From what I understand, Starfield is just like dudes, right? In a fantasy world, you have the opportunity to do more really cool things with it, to do better bosses, for example, and to have creatures feel like they're special more often. But you also have to run into the anything versus everything discussion. You spend your time and attention on the magic system. Maybe you can't do the creatures. You do the creatures, maybe you can't do the magic system. You've got to pick and choose. You don't have 20 years to make the game, although we are getting close to that now. 15, baby. So this is Cope. This is Cope. Morrowind had both. Morrowind had both. Oblivion had both. New Vegas has both, right? Because I would consider the more in-depth weapon system of New Vegas like as compensating for magic. This is Cope. This is developer Cope. This is like, I couldn't do it, so like no one can cope. And it's like, that's fine. It's fine if you're... I would understand this argument if he was saying in the context of a strict development time, but the thing is, Morrowind had a relatively short development time, Oblivion had a very short development time, and New Vegas obviously had like 18 months. So this is Copium. He's just trying to like feel better about himself. So, and he says this, which like Starfield took 8 years, and it's like worse than other things. You can develop after your game releases. Yeah, there's so many excuses and ways to do this that trying to say that it's one or the other and that you just don't have time is... It's actually, I wouldn't say it's Cope. I would say it's disingenuous. Like, I think he's talking on the wavelength of people who don't know anything about games development at all. And so he's just kind of giving this kind of answer to, like, kind of shut the interviewer up, as opposed to, like, actually trying to have a discussion. This actually feels bad faith, like, this answer. Honestly, he needs to streamline the RPG elements into not being there so Tez can finally evolve into a PlayStation movie game. Especially with big games with a large fan base, fans actually appreciate when devs take time to create a polished final project. I mean, even popular games, people at the time before Legend ZA came out, Pokemon fans were excited to know that they were going to delay the game because they thought that meant they were actually going to put more effort into it. That ended up not being the case, and they just took longer with it. But initially, when it was announced that it was delayed, people were actually happy because they thought the game would be better for it. Like, when you have people who actually want to play the game you're releasing, you can delay, right? It's more so like Morrowind, where like they didn't know that people were going to like the game, that they had to rush and take risks because they didn't have all the time to make it. And even with Oblivion, I think they were still trying to get acquired, I believe. So they were still under some pressures when they were making Oblivion too, just not as much. But like this entire last thing here just feels very disingenuous. It feels very... it feels dishonest. It doesn't feel like he's being... I don't know how else to put it. Maybe not replacing creativity as much as workload, I guess. They are using AI tools to replace creativity anyways nowadays. How can they make these excuses? I mean, like, even then, I'm fine with them using AI for the workflow. If, like... So, like, one thing they have to do is they have to test how a quest scripting works, right? So they need all the dialogue to trigger. But the dialogue lines themselves could be implemented with AI. Like, text-to-speech AI, just until they have it working, and then they can hire people to actually voice it. That was one of the things they did in Starfield, was they used temporary placeholder text with AI-generated audio, right? To, like, test quest scripting and all that. And, like, that's fine. But if you're going to do things like that, then it means that your workflow is improved, so you don't have as many excuses. Did they leave some of it in the game? I think it's in the code. Like, I think that if you open the construction site, you can find it. Yeah, powered voice. I kind of don't trust Steam. No. So I don't think it was a big deal. Like, I don't think it's in the final product. Let's see, it's the magic system. From an internal perspective, what is the biggest misconception fans have about the creation engine and its limitations given the talk of moving Bethesda's games to an alternative like the Unreal Engine? What you have to realize is that if you were to switch engines, and I'll say this for any game anywhere, is that it is a massive effort. You are spent doing nothing but making an engine work. You were talking about putting your developers into a situation where they can't play the game. They may not even be able to work on making the game for long stretches because the engine is not there or up to snuff yet. That's an enormous thing. We ran into it with Fallout 76. The engine had to be changed dramatically to do multiplayer. It made things extremely difficult for the team. Also, the creation engine has been tweaked to serve Bethesda's purposes for so many years, decades really, that at this point it's probably it. The benefits that you get from switching to Unreal Engine are probably not going to materialize until 2 titles down the road. Every Bethesda game that has ever released has had major improvements made to the creation engine. Significant improvements are always being made to it. There's an entire team that's devoted to nothing but doing that. But the advantage you have there is that you can still run the game during the whole time because you have an existing engine. You're not having to figure out how to put this new thing into place. I would fall on the side of keeping the creation engine, keep working on it. If there's something you see that is only possible in Unreal, put it into the creation engine. That would be a place where if it's anything versus everything, you say let's do that. Let's do that. Anything. If Unreal does it and Creation doesn't, and we feel we need to do it, do it. I sympathize with them. Because obviously they're still using it for a reason. I think the biggest argument against using the Creation Engine at this point is that it's an argument about iteration, but they aren't iterating. Because, like, they've released Skyrim in 2011, Fallout 4 5 years later, Fallout 76 like a year later, and Starfield. So it's like, they're not iterating. They're not using the engine enough to justify keeping it. That's the only downside. But I agree that the engine lets them do a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, like, just within Morrowind's engine, I feel like you can make a pretty good game. Like, a pretty good, like, modern game just with what's in that engine. And it's basically the, like, baseline of it. This is the biggest part I agree with, though, is that it would be such a massive time sink in the project. So it's like, if they're actually interested in, like, making games again, it would be too much to ask. View the Creation Engine as a time sink for Bethesda. They could free the team up to focus on their games if they switch to Unreal, but you're saying it's the other way around. It's the complete opposite. You can't even begin to believe how much is baked into the engine in any of these games. To just swap out the engine, people have the sense that you just pull this plug. You put a new one in, and so it renders things more beautifully. The Creation Engine is way more than a rendering engine. Way, way more. It's a whole method of how data is converted into function. And to the ability to do other things. You cannot just swap that out. That's not something that happens easily. But there is a compromise, because they made Reblivion, and they made it run in the Creation Engine, or I think it's Gamebryo, but they ran the graphics through Unreal Engine 5. So there's no reason that Elder Scrolls and Fallout games can't use a better renderer while still using the Creation Engine. So you can get both. What have you made of the TV show? I think it's amazing. I love the Fallout TV series. I actually think it's getting better the longer they go on. They're hitting their stride. For me, the first season had a couple of places where they were winking and nodding at the game. You give Dogmeat a stim pack and he instantly bounces up. That's funny and that's amusing, but they're getting into actual storytelling in that world and that environment now in the second season. And I think they're really finding their mark. It's still very much Fallout, but they're telling good stories of their own at the same time. Okay. Will Fallout lead to the Elder Scrolls getting its own show? Watch TV show. Good. Buy action figure. Crimson Desert is looking good these days, and it's on a bespoke game engine too. I hope it's as good as it looks. What is Crimson Desert? Very generic looking white man. Well, that looks sick actually. He's holding a cat. I mean, this looks epic. It's okay to be a generic white man. No. Every video game character has to be a goonified porn baby. If I play a Morrowind Remake it, I want fucking gamer girl Azura tits on screen at all times. Henry of Skullets Gaming. I'm gonna skim this one because like I don't care about an Elder Scrolls TV show for this interview. Money that I care about really. Not. Yeah. TV shows aren't really profitable compared to games. Make billions of dollars on Skyrim. What you're gonna make by licensing the IP to this TV show is just peanuts. Did he say penis? But what it does get you is attention. What it gets you is notoriety. It's marketing. Do they really need marketing for Elder Scrolls 6? I also think there's something very special and unique about Fallout that lends itself to become a TV or movie experience, whereas the Elder Scrolls is trying to be standard kind of fantasy. The Lord of the Rings movies exist. We have Game of Thrones. You have to try to find something to lead into that would be more special about it. I have been in people's chats about this before, when people have gotten asked about what an Elder Scrolls show would be. And the best answer I ever heard was anthology. For it to just be like a what if Marvel show. The what if Marvel show. Where it just goes over different kind of like topics from the show. Or from the lore. And just kind of like animates them. Like, they could do some things like that. I think that would be an interesting idea. And you could change animation styles. You could go for like the Spider-Verse 3D with 2D effect. You could go for like, you know, a Samurai Jack aesthetic for like maybe a more human story. You could go for very Sakuga heavy like studio animation if you're gonna do like a crazy battle. You could even do like real acting if you wanted to. I just think being real holds it back. But like, I think an anthology Elder Scrolls series would be kind of interesting. It would just have to be written by interesting people. Bring back claymation. Dude, an Elder Scrolls claymation would be sick. It would be awesome if they animated all the different creatures with different animation styles, actually. Like if dragons were claymation, but then like maybe creatures were different types of animations. That would be an interesting way to do it. You look at Fallout, everything is special about it. There's nothing like the Fallout universe anywhere else in gaming. That's not true. Don't people pretty much play like Stalker and Metro for like what Fallout is? It's not. I don't think Fallout's the most unique thing on the franchise, on the planet. I mean, people don't even agree on what Fallout is. And draw eyeballs as opposed to going into a fantasy world where I've got elves and people throwing spells around. There's a dragon. I've seen dragons 20 times before. Actually, it's a wyvern. What are you giving to viewers that's new? Writing. Elder Scrolls lore is sick. Just just put that in the show. But I mean, I guess that's the problem, right? Is all the modern people don't contribute to the lore. They destroy it. Brain rot Bethesda is cringe. Alex Mihok, 1738, thinks that bug Thestards can't appreciate New Vegas. Puts the biggest smile on my face. That thumbnail is so beautiful. I hope it never goes off YouTube. Hi. What's the C? What's the C in colon 3C? Is it like a beard? There's a dragon over there. You can fight that dragon. Sorry, I know I need to get back to reading, but I'm thinking of the Bug Thestards thumbnail. Is that video still on YouTube? Have you ever had 22 inches of meat in your mouth? Bug Thestard. Yeah. Oh, I love this video. I've never watched the video, but God, this thumbnail. It's so beautiful. The shitty poor cropping on the side with like the black marks. The white text doesn't match ratio-wise into the video where Fallout New Vegas does distance-wise from the border. Oh, it's so gorgeous. 3-hour video, that's chump change. I've watched someone react to a 5-hour video over the span of 9 hours. Like, it just depends. Now, I can't sit there and watch it like the same way you watch a movie, but it's good background noise, like when you're like washing dishes to listen to. Notoriety. Yeah, they're basically saying Elder Scrolls doesn't need a show because Elder Scrolls has reputation. It has posterity. Why did Bethesda seem resistant to remaking Morrowind despite the massive fan demand? Here we go. The problem with doing Morrowind is that I bet they don't have the original. Oh my fucking. Alright. I need a minute. I'll be right back. I have returned. I really just had to pee, but I think the timing made it funnier. I also pissed for like 30 consecutive seconds. That can't be good for you. I need to rehydrate. Okay. I bet they don't have the original code. So there's a ways around this, right? For one, Morrowind technically runs in the same base engine as like Starfield, right? Obviously, the engine has been tweaked. It works slightly differently over time. But those tweaks could be accounted for when you take the original game and change it. So all you need is a release copy of Morrowind. You don't need the code, right? Optionally, you could take Morrowind's engine as it was and just work with it and improve it. Right? Like you said, modders do that. So that's another option. Option 3 is to just remake it from scratch in the new engine. Morrowind is literally it's so small. You can load the entirety of Morrowind's map on your console. Not your console, but your PC. I don't have a particularly powerful PC. And I can literally in OpenMW, with like higher graphic settings than the base game ever had, I can view distance load the entirety of Morrowind, right? This is just lazy. Just try. Come up with a real answer, right? Don't do this shit. This shit is saying like, this is him like taking his hand and kind of like putting his finger over the lip of the interviewer and going like, shh. You know, it's not a real answer. Went home from a wedding last year and stopped at a gas station and pissed for 3 minutes. It was epic. The longest I've ever gone was, I think, 1.5 minutes. It feels very good. I bet they don't have it. Yeah, I didn't even notice that, I bet. He's just throwing it out there. It's so lazy. Like, it's not only that the answer itself is lazy, it's that he's being lazy and just kind of shitting this out to, like, get away from it. This is bad faith. This is a bad faith answer, because he's not trying to have a discussion here. He's just making shit up. Also, he officially said the word cringe. We need to take stock of this. I don't want to touch it. What if it's unclean? The game is so old. I don't know if the original source code exists anymore. If it does, can you even compile it? Yeah. You can boot up Morrowind off Steam. What's this fucking guy's issue? I mean, this would just kind of fall back into the supporting the idea I had that he probably doesn't play games. He's probably just one of those people that works on games without actually playing them. He's like one of those people that works in a kitchen, but he only eats Hot Pockets. When you're looking at Oblivion, they still had the code. They could still compile it. Putting the code into the new version of the engine was a possibility, which is what they did. He's the interview guy. Yeah, he just comes to work every day and like plays Candy Crush. He's just like, all right, hey guys, you working hard or hardly working? You know, he's just dicking around in the office. He didn't get laid off, but all the programmers who worked on Starfield will. The other thing I would say is to go back and play Morrowind and tell me that it's the game you want to play again. So first of all, go back. I played it twice last year. So there's no going back. I do replay it. Like, people actively replay Morrowind. People actively play Morrowind. Like, this is not a hypothetical scenario. And it is the game I want to play again. I want magic back. I want speed back. I want mysticism back. I don't know about that one. But I want a sequel to Morrowind. I don't want a remake, and I don't want a remaster. I want them to actually take like the world building and like the political system of the game with like the factions and to make it more interesting and dynamic, like New Vegas, where trying to rise the ranks and become affiliated with all of the different groups is actually difficult. Or at the very least, there are repercussions for certain groups, and to make things like the faction quest lines where you actually need certain amounts of skills to progress. I don't know. It's just like, he's saying this like Morrowind is just understood to be kind of dog shit, and it's like Morrowind is kind of understood to be goated. Like, at this point in time, I feel like the position that Morrowind is bad, you have to defend that more than I feel like Morrowind good has to be defended. Or, I mean, just in general, don't go into it with that perspective. Like, and also, he's dodging the question. Like, he's being asked why Bethesda doesn't want to touch it, and he's saying, like, well, you go back and play it. And it's like, well, I don't care that you're, like, a fuck. I like Morrowind. You have to give an actual answer to this. Morrowind has aged, it's true. Yes, all media has aged by the amount that it's existed. We all have these fond memories of things that were pivotal moments in our gaming fantasy histories that we absolutely love, but you go back and play a 20-year-old game and you will cringe. You will cringe. You will die. Shalom and a happy Hanukkah. You will cringe. People even had cringe moments with the Oblivion remake, but they forgave it because you can't take this shit seriously. I'm gonna stop giving him like the nice narration voice. I'm just gonna read this shit monotone. I worked on Oblivion. I'm even responsible for some of those cringe moments. The further back you go, the more this is going to be an issue. The reality of playing Morrowind would not stand the test of time, in my opinion. would not. So first, okay, let's dissect this a little bit. He's making the assumption that Morrowind wouldn't hold up. And you know why that is? Because he hasn't fucking played the game. He's straw manning it. He's fucking standing here being like, more mid. But he's never even played it. Would not stand the test of time, in my opinion. It does. The Morrowind has a lot of issues, but those are issues that more so need to be improved upon in a sequel, not because they're old style designs. There's a lot of games that stand the test of time. They forgave it because they're reliving something. They're enjoying the nostalgia. So he thinks Reblyvion is dog shit and cringe, and that people only liked it because they played the original. It's kind of based. But, I don't know. I replayed Oblivion last year when the remake came out. I think Oblivion just holds up. So, like, it's got its issues, but it's not like it's unplayable. There's, like, good aspects to, like, the leveling. If you just, like, keep the difficulty down. And, in particular, I think the process of just, like, doing quests in Oblivion is, like, not too bad. I think that the process of doing the quest lines and side quests and just running from place to place in the world before you have everywhere discovered is pretty cool. I think that the environments are very enjoyable. I like magic when you max it out. Magic progression is kind of awkward, but I think in general it's got its place. It's just so dishonest. Now, if you were to completely remake Morrowind with the Skyrim engine to try and rebuild it from the ground up, yeah, there we go. You know it's possible. That's a whole other story. But that's an entire project. That's a whole 4-year development cycle. Why not go and make something new? Kind of based. Extremely based moment, by the way. I agree with this. Yeah, make something new, bro. Do it. Freaking do it. It's based. This is based. I agree with this sentiment. If they don't want to remake Morrowind, then yeah, go make something new. But you gotta actually make it. You can't spend 8 years on it and then be mad people didn't like it. Let's revisit the lands of Morrowind and do a new story. You can include the giant crab palace. What? Oh, he's talking about Alderune and all of that stuff. Make it new and avoid things that would not have survived the test of time. You know, I don't even really think of Alderune as a crab. I just sort of see it as a giant, like, dome. It wasn't until Nimona points out... Is it Nimona? Or Naminda? I think it's Naminda. Naminda points out that it used to be a crab. And then I was like, oh yeah, the ginormous crab. For their floaty combat. Why has it been so hard for the studio to nail the feel of hitting an enemy? Actually, I think they've got combat sometimes. In Fallout... In Morrowind... Aldrin Crab to fight the Daedra and the Evasion. Morrowind's has terrible feedback normally, but the feeling of hitting someone strong enough to knock them down, either with like stamina damage or just with like a big enough hit, the feeling of whacking someone and seeing them tumble down to the ground is really good feedback. It might not be like visual, but mechanically it's an incredible amount of feedback. Because there are those hits that you do to people when you like outstat them so hard that like one power attack just drives them to the ground. And that's like an incredible feeling. Morrowind is really good at portraying massive gaps in power. So like when you get like 1 or 2 shotted, the enemy just feels like a fucking invulnerable god. Because they don't like even react to you. And then the opposite when you're like too strong for an enemy. But when you're on the same level as an enemy, combat looks really weird in Morrowind. Especially missing. The fact that there's no animations to display that you're missing is really off. And then I think the VATS and like explosive gore of Bloody Mess is pretty good. I know that people think it's overrated, but I like it. I like shooting a guy in the head and his arm popping off. It's cool AF4. I took a step forward with Skyrim. They're going to continue to take more steps forward in the Elder Scrolls 6. Combat can get very dicey in these role-playing games because it has to be exciting and energetic the minute you step out of the prison you start in. Well, it doesn't. Which means you have none of your special perks or attributes. You've got to maintain that too as the player's power ramps up. I mean, no, combat can just feel like shit at the start. Combat always feels like shit at the start. You can do a few Skyrim playthroughs before you encounter decapitation animations. I mean, I think the Skyrim animations kind of suck. They're really victimized. They're a big victim of the fact that like the models don't line up very well. The especially the dragon one, where you just start like stabbing his nose, but like it just looks like you're stabbing the air and kind of wafting it in, like you're trying to get him to smell your sword. It's a game focused on combat. Your combat capabilities and the nature of combat does not change dramatically over time. Oh boy, you're not supposed to admit that. And so they can hone the combat to make it super exciting. But if every time I gain a level suddenly I have a new perk that changes how I do business in a fight, that's tough. And really tough on a combat team. Just fucking epic! God. First of all, he's admitting that they fucking make the combat progression ass so that it can be better at the start. And then he's saying that if you were to get better at fighting every level, that it would be hard to implement. Like, yeah, but that doesn't make it bad. It's still based. Where you grab them and awkwardly wallop them. I know what you're talking about. You grab them by the neck and then you go at the little, like, duh! Like you're trying to, like, ring a bell. But I'm willing to bet that they make improvements on it. It's something that I know in the past Todd has cared deeply about. He very much likes the action RPG. An attention on trying to make combat more visceral and exciting, but it collides with the RPG elements and not in a good way. Stealth is the biggest example of this. How do you start out not being good at sneaking, but still making start out not being good at being sneaky, but still make being sneaky exciting, and then still maintain that when you're absolutely amazing at sneaking. It's hard to have growth in those things and to make that level 1 from all the way to the end. Well, but they fail at that. Stealth being really bad at the start and then really boring when you're good is something that is really criticized in Oblivion and Skyrim, especially Oblivion, because like it actually has like a stealth faction that makes you like stealth. Yeah, this is something that's actually commonly criticized, so I don't know what he's trying to get at here, because it's not like the team accomplishes it. When you're level 1, you should suck. Yeah, like you should be bad at the start, but there should be ways to compensate. I think they fail to do that, though. Like, when you start at 15 sneak in these games, you just can't do anything. You can't... Sorry, I think my glasses are pushing out on my nose there. You just can't accomplish anything. Like, if you have 15 sneak, you're not doing shit. But by the time you have, like, 80 sneak in the relevant perks, you just become like a god. There's like a sweet spot where it feels okay, but because look at the disposable item choices in Skyrim. There's like no scrolls worth using for the cost. That would be a good way to do it, to make it so that you can still gain sneak experience while using aid items to make it easier to, like invisibility potions or scrolls. Could make it to where you could actually accomplish something at low level and you would get the sneak experience while you do it. But they don't want to make scrolls good for some reason. Scrolls were a lot better in Morrowind because you had convenient scrolls. You had open scrolls. You had, what was it, eCache's Lock Splitter, and then you had intervention scrolls, and you even had, I think, Mark and Recall. And because of how lightweight they are, I believe early on, I think health and restore fatigue scrolls are more weight efficient than potions. I think. I could be wrong. But I mean, I think the feedback of like shooting someone in Fallout and them exploding into giblets is pretty good. I guess they just don't want to bring that to Elder Scrolls because that's like a Fallout thing at this point. But like, I don't know. I don't care. For me, I think like Morrowind and Oblivion kind of have a very goofy combat aesthetic that helps mitigate some of the downside of not having good feedback. Like the fact that in Morrowind, when you kill a guy with like a 100 damage 5-second spell, he goes like, "Hua," and then like just kind of slowly descends to the ground is very funny. Or in Oblivion, where when you hit someone with a sword, they go, "Yeah," and then like very slowly like waft to the side like a thing of feathers. It's very silly, which helps with the shit feedback. If you want to go for something heavier, I think they should just try implementing the gore from Fallout. Like, imagine you shoot a fireball at a dude's head and he just fucking explodes into bits. I think they don't explode in Elder Scrolls because there's necromancy mechanics mostly. Oh, that's interesting, actually. But take into account that they do have a perk in the destruction skill tree that makes it so that using electric spells turns the enemy into ash, so that enemy necromancers can't resurrect them. So they've already taken that into account. So you could make it so that having the perks that do that is more of something that you take if you're going to be a melee fighter that doesn't want to use necromancy yourself. You could also go for the approach that enemies have limbs, and that the limbs they have affect how they work. So if you shoot a fireball and it rips someone's arm off, but you resurrect them with necromancy, they would fight differently. Like, they would just charge you with their head instead of their arms. Because that's how they do it in certain zombie games, like I think Resident Evil and Call of Duty, right? Resurrect the arm! That's a much better idea. Maximum cabbage. What do you make of the debate over $100 games, especially for titles like Skyrim and the Fallout series that offer players so many hours of play? I remember for 15 years, the price of new and released games was $59.95. For 15 years it didn't change, not even a cost of living increase. Not even recognizing inflation, it stayed at that price point. The fact that the prices are going up, I can't fault them for that. But I don't think players look at the hours of experience per price of the title once they get past a certain number. There's going to be savvy players who do, but I think a lot of times it's just that immediate hit you in the jaw. The impact that I've got to drop this amount of money for a game. Yeah, this is how prices work. What I'm surprised you didn't ask about is if they weren't going to go to a subscription model. A pay-as-you-go model seems to be where everything is going these days. I can't get Microsoft Word unless I pay a monthly fee. The model for online games are indeed that way, but are single-player games going to go that way too? I know most of the answers for that. I think they would most likely sell the Elder Scrolls 6 for whatever the industry standard price is at the time. If consumers are accepting $79.95, that's what it'll sell for. True. All the people who still buy games, this is your fault. If they're accepting $99.95, that's what it'll sell for. This is why the Switch 2 sold for fucking $800 or whatever. It'll sell for whatever premium games go for at that time, and Microsoft has a heavy say in that and how it's marketed. Economies around the world are struggling a little bit. I personally think game developers would be wise to not push the prices higher, but gamers are a special breed. Getting a good sip of water there. I got a frog in my throat. He hates gamers. Full Metal Alchemist. You know, they will pay for what they want. I would be loath to tell you how much I have paid for gaming in my life. I'm sitting at a fancy gaming table I paid way too much for. We're willing to pay for our hobby, so maybe people will pay. That's not true. Gamers are pretty notoriously stingy, and I'm firmly in that camp, right? If I can get something for free, I will. But compared to a lot of other hobbies, gamers are very cheap in general. You have things like figure collecting. Like, just getting, like, a fucking Hatsune Miku, like, the size of this water bottle. Like, people pay, like, fucking hundreds of dollars for that shit. And it's just, like, people refuse to pay, like, $80 for a game that they can play for, like, 100 hours. So maybe people will pay for that, and smarter people on the marketing side then will be able to see that, then I will be able to answer that question better. Yeah, he's basically saying gamers are fucking stupid. I don't like the smug condescension because of his earlier things, but I do actually agree with him. I know it's a very unpopular opinion, but gamers are the reason games aren't taken seriously, and that games are more slop than most other mediums. Statue collection reveal when? I do have stuff on my desk. I have a little octopus man. I have a little tortoise, and I have several little ducks. Do they squeak? They're little rubber duckies. This one is in a bunny suit. The other one is an astronaut. One of them is at the beach. And one of them has his little traveling hat on. He's going to a foreign country to be sprayed with acid. And I have a little New Vegas snow globe. I want a pet duck, though. I don't think ducks make for good pets. Aren't they, like, super aggressive when they're not, like, parenting? Collect ducks like you, Neutron. Are you talking about Jimmy's father? You can keep ducks like you keep chickens. I do know someone who owns their own chickens for eggs. That's gotta be weird. You, like, see the chicken every day and you eat its egg. It's like, that's more personal than just making normal eggs. If Rockstar came and tapped you on the shoulder tomorrow and said, Bruce, we want you to set the vision for Grand Theft Auto 7, the setting, the story, everything, what would you do? You got the wrong guy. That's out of my wheelhouse. Now, if somebody wants to come in and ask me to do a fantasy or science fiction game, you know, now that's my wheelhouse. Urban gang warfare and driving cars around. I'm not your guy. Not even if they said you could make a GTA set inside the walls of the Imperial City. Based interviewer. Based interviewer. This is like that, like, I have like this quote about how like Dungeons and Dragons is like the ultimate game because you don't have to have rules to play it. Like you could theoretically make like a Dungeons and Dragons set in like New York City and just have it be that instead of like fighting creatures, you just get like mugged by like robbers. And like this is like that kind of energy. But if you don't have with roosters, they're infertile eggs anyways. Duck eggs are creamy. Has chicken, so he gives me eggs sometimes. The yolks are orange. Was there a sense inside Bethesda that it was good to see other big RPG series doing well to keep the genre strong and increase competition through games like Mass Effect, The Witcher, and others? We've done it! Baldur's Gate 3 and The Witcher mentioned in an Elder Scrolls 6 interview. This truly is our Elder Scrolls 6 interview. Did you bring up Elden Ring? No, you're right. That's the one thing we're missing. You got to bring up Baldur's Gate 3. You got to bring up The Witcher. You got to bring up a Soulsborne. It seems like Grand Theft Auto has replaced the Soulsborne in the discussion recently, which I don't get because GTA is not like an open world game. It's like a sandbox game. It's like slightly different. Is there a sense inside Bethesda that was good? Okay. We were probably more focused on Bethesda. The approach has always been we need to make an amazing game that our players and our audience loves. Audience are influenced by other games and they shift around you and wise to acknowledge those shifts and go with them. If you're always trying to beat the guy to your right at what he's doing, you're not going to make your best game. You have to make your best game the game you know how to make and maybe draw lessons from what they do. But Bethesda shouldn't be making the next Grand Theft Auto or the next Red Dead Redemption or whatever they may happen to be. They shouldn't. I mean, that's not their thing. They should look at those games and ask why they did these things really well and audiences loved it. Maybe Bethesda can find an analog in their games to offer the same things. They're doing it smart, but it still has to be our game. It's a good quote. The next Soulsborne game is a Nintendo exclusive, that's why. I think they made Night Rain just to show off that they could do a Fallout 76 type game correctly. What is Night Rain? Is it like a online Soulsborne? A Bethesda game is going to be a huge open world. A Bethesda game is going to be content rich. A Bethesda game is going to be immersive. These are all the things they're going to be. They shouldn't try to be something that they're not. They shouldn't try to make games that aren't in the wheelhouse. Starfield, for example, felt very natural. It's something that they're good at. If they choose to make a sequel to Starfield, I am betting it will rock because they will take those lessons learned. They will incorporate the things to make it a more traditional Bethesda game, and we'll knock that out of the park. We'll have to see if that's something that's in the cards, though. I left the company halfway through Starfield's development, so I'm probably in the same situation as people who played 100 hours of this game, and I have those complaints. But excuse me, dude, you still played 100 hours of that game. I played that game all the way to the bitter end. And I have thoughts and I have concerns, but I played it to the bitter end, and therefore that's a win for Bethesda. He's got a bit of a point. I will admit this. If you play a game for this long, you did get something out of it. I think a much better example is a game that you pick up and you just can't get through even a few hours of it. Like, I tried Devil May Cry 1, and I just didn't click with it. I wasn't into it. Or you kept playing hoping it would click. Yeah, that's a very common sentiment with Starfield and Fallout 4, is that people play it with the hope that it clicks. But I still think he has a point. I think that after a certain point, you have to know it's not going to click. Or at least that you have to approach the game in a different way to get it to click. Because, Tears of the Kingdom never clicked for me until I re-changed the way that I played it. And then it did click. But at the same time, that is a fault of the game. That it isn't structured in a way to encourage a progression that actually feels natural and rewarding. It's just a giant open world. If someone does that, it's not a sign that your game is good. It's a sign that the gamer trusted the studio. Yeah, that's another thing. Is that like I had a lot of prior faith, not prior faith necessarily, but I had like hope and expectation for Tears of the Kingdom to be better than Breath of the Wild. Because like for the 6 years in between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I had to hear people fucking suck Breath of the Wild's cock and slobber on its balls for like 6 years. But even though it's like it's got a lot of issues, so I was like, all right, here's the sequel that can do everything right, and then it certainly is a sequel. What are your hopes for the next Mass Effect? Fuck off. This is an Elder Scrolls game. This is an Elder Scrolls interview, man. I don't care about your work on Mass Effect. Did he even work on Mass Effect? Yeah, he did. He did. We checked that at the start. Rockstar are reportedly allowing a terminally ill fan early access to GTA 6 before they pass. Do you remember any such request at Bethesda? Bethesda has done that. Bethesda works with Make-A-Wish and have done exactly that, but they do not advertise it. It is not something that they promo because that's not how they believe that sort of thing should operate. This isn't a marketing opportunity for them. That's not what it's about. This is about acknowledging that Make-A-Wish would approach them and say they have someone who is terminally ill and that this is their dream. This is what they would like to have, and Todd is always generous with his time and with the studio for those. They're not going to tell you who they did it for. They're not going to say what had happened, because that's not what it's about. That person and that experience should remain that way. That's a good quote. That's nice. How would you go about bringing Arena or Daggerfall to life as modern remakes? I think Morrowind is as far back as you can go. This interview's a gem, man. This interview's making me giggle. Bro said, fuck Daggerfall. I worked on Daggerfall. It's too old in the tooth to really remake in that way. Not that you couldn't revisit the Iliac Bay. You could definitely set a modern Bethesda game there without any problem. The story in Daggerfall was minimalistic because that was what the technology allowed for at the point. The art was the same way. It was minimalistic because that was all you could do. Arena was just a glorified dungeon hopping game. That doesn't take away from Arena. It was a state of the art back then, and it was cutting edge game in a lot of ways. You just have to view it in the context of its time. Morrowind is the first game that you get the modern sense of the graphics as we think of them today being a possibility, and therefore that's a game that you could remake, but I would not go back to Daggerfall or to Arena. I don't think there's enough there. I don't think they contribute enough to make a modern game out of them. That's a very condescending way to say it. You'd have to actually, remake the games, not remaster them. Yeah, exactly. Rumor has it. No soup for you. Will you let little Timmy play Fallout 76 before everyone else and explore a completely empty world alone? That's so sad. I don't want to think about that. That's very crushing to know he played a multiplayer game alone. That's very sad. I don't want to joke about that. We'll return to Iliac Bay with fans theorizing that the teaser we've seen so far are hinting at High Rock and Hammerfell. Yeah. How rich is that location as a setting to revisit? I made that up, sorry. Well, no, they really let people play the games. It's just imagining it with Fallout 76 in particular is so sad. At least with Fallout 4, I mean, that's a game. It's like a single-player game. It would be like if your dream wish to play before you died was Fortnite. You just ran around an empty map. I don't think you have an area that isn't rich in potential in Tamriel. Yeah, true. Every province is cool. The only province that would probably be boring if it was the only province in the game is like Valenwood. Valenwood would get kind of old, I think. But that's because I think literally the entirety of Valenwood is a forest, right? So like visually it would probably get a little bit exhausting. Valenwood is probably cool, Bosber Gaming. They have interesting culture, but if you had to tree elves, I'm thinking in the creation engine, how would you make it engaging to run around like post Skyrim, right? So they're not going to Morrowind level where you could have like levitation and like jump spells. So how would you actually traverse like a giant jungle area? Because they weren't even willing to do Cyrodiil as a jungle. Grappling. So the funny thing is there was a game called Daggerfall that had a mechanic called climbing. I'm just saying, I think that post Skyrim and Fallout 4, where your movement options are very limited, I don't think they could do Valenwood. You can climb that mountain. No, I think Valenwood would be very interesting if you had like Morrowind mechanics, or like even if you just incorporated like something like the jetpack from Fallout 4 like as a mechanic. You need climbing. You need more mechanics than Skyrim has. If it was just like on ground, like a giant forest, and every now and then you go into a tree and there's like a loading screen, and then you're up in the treetops, like that would be ass. I think similarly, I think they would make most of the provinces boring, but I think they all have potential. Black Marsh would be ass in a post Skyrim game. That's not controversial. Step on the toes of things you've recently done yourself. Let's not go back to Cyrodiil, for example, but I think Hammerfell and High Rock would be great places to go. Somerset Isle and the other islands and do great stuff there. I think it's been long enough that you could revisit Morrowind. Yeah, you could do the mainland game. Or you could do the mainland of Morrowind and have Vardenfell be like its own little thing. Although Vardenfell I don't think really exists anymore. Doesn't it? It's like, it's gone. They can make a game in 2 provinces. That's what they're suggesting, is if they keep the same scale they've been at, that they would need to use 2 provinces to make another region as big. And that combining High Rock and Hammerfell would be nice, since that's like the top corner of the continent. I don't think you can say this area is boring and therefore not worthy of Test 6. I think there is no such place in Tamriel. I don't think there is such a place in Tamriel, and that's by design. You're making a game world. You make everything cool and interesting. Oh my god! Can I find this quickly? Todd Howard says space is boring. Boring on purpose. Okay, I misremembered it. No, I'm not signing up to your fucking game letter. I misremembered the quote. But yeah, it doesn't matter what your setting is. If you want to be interesting with it, you can be interesting with it. It got exploded by Red Mountain and obliterated by Bardal, but it's still a smoking ruin. They're all dead. Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be like a graveyard type thing to explore. You'd be exploring like ruins. That would be really cool, actually, to explore the ruins of Vardenfell. If you had a way to like sift through the ash, so you could like explore Vivek and have it be more of a dungeon than a city, but it's basically unlivable. I think studios look at what No Man's Sky did with the bad release and the recovery and want to do the double dip of hype and redemption. I mean, I've heard the consensus. I've heard that No Man's Sky is still bad. And I just think flatly you should just release a good game. I think it's cool that you can improve a game post-release, but if a game is just shit, it's never gonna... Like... What can you do to a game post-release to turn it from, like, shit to gold? They like the model. That is true. There was, like, that entire thing with Fallout 76 where people were, like, desperate for 76 to, like, get their redemption. They even tried it with Starfield. Didn't they? Didn't they say there was, like, a Starfield 2.0? Curious. Yeah, there's an idea that they're going to do a Starfield 2.0. Yeah. It's a it's annoying. Just release the game good. They released Oblivion Remake and released a big patch for it. Now they won't touch it. Remake everything but the assets and engine. Rework all the systems. There's lots of cool... Okay, that's just him saying that you can go anywhere and make anything cool. For their mandate for employees to return to the office, saying that people making games need to be together for creative ideas to emerge in person. What do you think of that idea? This is interesting because I think work from home is kind of good. Oh, this is the last thing too. There's multiple components to the work you do in a dev studio. It's not mono-themed. This is a mistake a lot of people make. There's times when I need to shut my damn door and sit down and do stuff by myself. That's great for working from home, but having done that because I worked through the pandemic and I was completely working from home, you are also cut off from the other people and you start to lose the sense of the project. You don't get that sense of community or sharing of knowledge. But this isn't an either-or thing. You can have your cake and eat it too. If you have certain times when we say we need people in the office because we need to have some camaraderie, we need people to be working together, and you can also acknowledge that there's other times when you just sit down and you need to get work done without disruption. That's better at home. Have time for that too. It doesn't have to be one or the other. This isn't a single solution sort of thing. I'm also hopeful that online collaborative tools will get better. Although that is the distant future. Right now you tend to get isolated, and so you need somehow to make it so that you don't have an isolation, but you can still have the ability to focus. That's the problem with the office environment. There's so many distractions. You can't sit down and focus so easily. Yeah, he wrote this book. If you want to support him. They've released Oblivion Remake and released a big patch for it. Now they won't touch it. So did everyone take notes? I should have taken notes. But, knowing this is the guy who ruined Magic and that he thinks Morrowind is mid and shit and old is kind of funny. That's really funny. Because it's like, yeah, the kind of person who gets rid of Magic in Skyrim is absolutely the same type of person that thinks Morrowind is dog shit. You forgot that Morrowind is cringe. That's just funny. Baldur's Gate 3. He didn't mention Soulsborne. He also got the amount of time it's been since Skyrim wrong, funny enough. But I'm willing to forgive that. He's old. Where is this quote? I want to screenshot this. I should have done it then. I'm gonna screenshot the part where he calls it cringe. Slavery, racism. No, we can't do that. We gotta have Ralph or Stonefist be obviously wrong and obnoxious. They're a larger company now, but their quality's been evaporating progressively. I mean, it's obviously very. I don't know how to word. I don't know what the word would be, but it's very like anti-success to say that it's impossible to make good art in a comfortable position. But I do think that being in a desperate position influences the production of better art. Like, I've wanted to make a video on this for a while, but it would involve a lot of research I'm not interested in doing. But Majora's Mask for the N64, New Vegas, and the Ratchet and Clank trilogy, in contrast to games like Starfield and Tears of the Kingdom, and when it comes out GTA 6, because it'll be bad, you have these games that are all made under crunch, that are unbelievably rushed, and it's the time constraint around the game that creates a lot of the creative decisions in the game that influence the game for the better. As opposed to these games where they have forever to work on them, right? GTA 3 or GTA 5 was 2013, Breath of the Wild was 2017, and Fallout 4 was 2016. So you have like almost a decade for like some of these games, and they're mid. And now, obviously, these are extremes. There are plenty of moderate games that have a few years of development and come out fine, right? But like, I do think in a lot of cases, crunch brings out the creative drive in people, because you don't have time. You don't have time to meander. Like, you have to go, and it brings out a lot in those games. And I want to make that video, but there's so much research you would have to do for that video. I would have to track down all of the Ratchet and Clank creator documentaries. You would have to track down every interview that the game developers have ever done to look for anything that relates to the video. Like, just doing the research for a video like that would probably take like a quarter of a year. Even if the video was only like 10 or 20 minutes, that would still probably take months of research. That's just something I'm not really interested in doing. Control F cringe. Is Control F the one that searches the page? Here we go. I'm sorry, chat. I'm sorry, little one. You must be obliterated for the time being. And I need to maneuver this so it just looks slightly. There we go. Okay, this is good. And then what is it? It's print screen. Alright. Alright, chat. You may speak again. Oblivion was cringe, but at least it was also based. That's a genius quote, Mr. Superman. That's a genius quote. Okay, I was yapping hard. There's a lot more going on in the Elder Scrolls universe, but they're tapped out. Yeah, I mean, the people who wrote the original interesting dialogue and lore and stories like have left. The like people at Bethesda right now aren't the people who made the series cool, and they're not interested in pursuing those original stories and like lore. Which like, I think that's fine, but it's just like either take a crack at it or stop using Elder Scrolls. They have so many resources. They put all their eggs in one basket because they're fearful control freaks at the top who like the vision and talent to execute themselves, and the talent drives talent away. If they just spent some of their money without being crazy control freaks, they'd rebuild talent, and side projects would They'd rebuild talent, and side projects would stick or fail at cheaper prices. And what worked, they could incorporate into new titles. That's a good take. Bethesda isn't the worst at that. They don't really seem to keep people, but compared to the horror stories you hear with Rockstar, they aren't the absolute talent churner. Like, the guy who did CJ in San Andreas, like, was so angry that he said that they literally have to get someone else to voice CJ if they do a remake. Like, he would not work with them. And it's like, that was like 20 years ago. What happened? They did the same thing with the guy who plays Nico, I believe, in GTA 4, Nico Bellic. Is that the base game guy, or is that the Ballad of Gay Tony guy? But either way, the guy, like, fucking hates Rockstar. I believe the guy who they had play Lamar in GTA 5 also hates Rockstar. They seem to be really bad at working with their people, and I'm guessing it's because of the fact that they probably underpay them. Wasn't the Indiana Jones game that Bethesda made actually well liked? I don't know. I don't know anything about that game. I've never heard of San Andreas development being held. No, not the development, just the way that they treat their employees. Like, the people who work with them refuse to work with them in the future is kind of like more of the thing. Oh, wait. Well, no. No, I don't know. I was thinking for that video, would you consider GTA 5 or Red Dead Redemption 2 as being the most recent Rockstar title? They're both old, though, for how long GTA 6 is going to take. People who replay old games a lot need to move on from gaming for a while. I don't know. Do you feel the same about people who watch old movies too much? You think people who only watch 90s movies need to stop watching movies for a while? I actually think my favorite decade for movies was probably 2000s. I feel like most of the movies I've seen from that era are some of my favorite. All right. I am hungry. I think I'm going to go look for food. I ate like 6 donuts before stream, but I think it's more so just I think I'm getting hungry. It didn't really fill me up. It just sandwich it up. Come on, Jeff. Wrap it up. Wrap it up. I love that so much. Such an asshole thing to do. It's a shame CJ is my favorite Ebony video game character. You could have just said Black. Ebony feels weird. Or you could just say favorite video game character. Why you gotta specify that he's black? Who's my favorite video game character, actually? I play a lot of games where the main character doesn't fucking have any personality because they're like either like boring on purpose or a blank slate. I'm really fond of the New Vegas companions. Link doesn't have a character, but he does make me horny. Favorite game character is Crom. Oh, it might be Tharja, actually. I really like Tharja. Tharja and Noir. I adore the two of them. Oh, you know what? Actually, it's good that you reminded me of that. I'm going to post something I found. Play echoes. I can't open this on stream because the person does not say for work art, but I found someone who made shitpost of the Fire Emblem Awakening cast in Oblivion. And it's some of my favorite images I've ever seen. It's this weird intersection of interests. Like, you know, like the support conversations with like the characters. It's like it's Mirabelle and like the support conversation dialogue, and it's like, I'm not talking to you. It's because I don't like you. But it's just so weird to see it. Alright. I'm going to end stream and eat, and then I'm going to actually finish this video I've been editing for a week that I said would take 3 days. Bye-bye.